And I am Karen, and I'm the chair of the Housing Advisory Board, and I want to welcome everybody to the June 25th meeting. I'm going to call it to order and do a roll call. Karen here, Lauren here, ML here, Cindy hello
Here.
Chip. And Michael Lucchese is biking up, so he will be a soon. So I think that's everything. So today we're gonna approve the minutes. We're gonna open up to public participation. We're gonna have matters from the board that include healthy buildings, stronger community roadmap. Then we'll do a housing equity symposium recap from 2021. We'll talk about the quarterly update to council and we'll review the work plan. And then there will be matters from staff and then open time for thoughts and suggestions, and then we will adjourn. So did everyone get a chance to read the minutes from May 14th? And does anybody have any comments or edits or changes that they want to make? Okay, roll call. Michael's here. If not, will someone make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Even in a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? None. All right, passes. Tiffany, do we have anybody who wants, public participation? Are you here for public participation? All right.
Where do you want us to talk from? Just here or?
That's fine.
Or-
Give me a second. I just need to go over the rules,
Okay.
but it'll just take a second to pull them up. All right. Are you back with us? Good?
No, we didn't read. Okay, the rules for public participation.
Public participation. So the city is engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive and inclusive civic engagement. The vision supports the physical and emotional safety of community members, staff, board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, etc. More information, you can follow this link. And following are examples of rules of decorum that are in the Boulder Revised Code that will be upheld during this meeting by our chair. And all remarks and testimony we ask be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threatening statements or other forms of intimidation, obscenities, racial epithets, and other speech or behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants, we do ask you, if you're participating online, that you display your entire name before we allow you to speak online. And that's it.
And 3 minutes, right? Okay. Great.
Hi, my name is Megan Mansfield, and I am the Government Affairs Coordinator for the Boulder Area Rental Housing Association. We're a local trade association, and we represent over 16,000 rental units here in the Boulder area. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the Healthy Buildings Initiative, which I understand Crystal's going to present on after us. So we have submitted written comments to staff and appreciate their engagement on this issue. They also recommended we come speak with you this evening to talk a little bit about our perspective. So I just wanted to share a few concerns regarding the practicality of the next steps in Boulder's climate action goals, specifically how they might affect rental housing providers. Right now, rental housing providers are navigating the challenging economic environment. Rents are declining, vacancies are rising, insurance premiums have skyrocketed, and a number of new state level mandates are driving up operating costs. In this environment, it is increasingly difficult for property owners to absorb additional financial burdens. Our main concern is the reliability and capacity of the electric infrastructure. Upgrading to electric systems is not only expensive, but often delayed by utility timelines and permitting backlogs. In addition, the grid is not currently set up to handle upgrades, as we have witnessed with brownouts and power loss. A board member, Cal, will talk about some real world examples that she's experienced after I say a few things. As you know, or may not know, Boulder implemented Smart Regs program, and it went into effect in 2018. This required rental properties to meet strict energy efficiency standards. Many rental property owners invested heavily in high efficiency gas powered systems during that period. Changing the standards now risks undermining some of those investments were made at that time and forcing them to potentially premature replace otherwise efficient compliant equipment. We do appreciate the emphasis. We understand they're looking at end of life replacements, so we appreciate that concept. However, the reality on the ground is a little bit more complex. For most older buildings, transitioning to electric is not simply a matter of just swapping out the appliance. It can require extensive electrical upgrades, including full rewiring, which adds significant cost and complexity. Given this context, we respectfully urge the city to prioritize electrification in owner-occupied housing. For this next phase, rental properties have already undergone extensive improvements under Smart Regs, and that's still in effect if anyone were to go become a rental now. If rental housing is to be included moving forward, we strongly advocate for a flexible, incentive-driven approach, one that includes a dedicated city liaison, to assist with permitting, planning, cost estimating, and navigating rebate.
That's a really nice cue. Yes, you did that. I was just about to say, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I can certainly you guys have more questions.
Oh, Megan, could you spell your last name for me?
Oh, yeah, it's Hardy. P as in Paul, F as in Frank, ANSTIEL.
Thank you.
So basically every letter somewhere.
Yes, yes.
No X.
Yes.
Okay, good.
And I'll just introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Kroll. I'm the executive director of Bar House. So I'm just here to participate and listen and really appreciate Crystal's prompting of us in being a part of the conversation. It's been very productive.
And we like the concept long-term. I just think there's a lot of practical implications that are important to think about.
And we brought Kel for some real world experience.
So I'm Kel Darnell, and I'm a small local landlord. So I'm that mom and pop you hear about all the time. That's me. Okay. And I have 2 houses on the hill. So I want to talk to you about what it takes to upgrade a 100-year-old house. Do any of you have a boiler in your house? Okay. Most people have never seen one. So this is an issue, but what I really want to talk about is electrical upgrades. So I think there's a bunch of moving parts that a lot of people don't understand, and I'm not saying I do by any means. This is such a complicated issue that I walked right into it and smacked my face on it and then had to keep going. So my husband's an electrician. I thought, how hard could it be? And all I wanted, 200-year-old houses on the hill, one in the 900 block of 13th Street, one on the 1000 block of 13th Street, both have 1 big apartment and 2 small apartments. Neither had laundry because there's no power for laundry. So I wanted 1 washer and dryer in each of those buildings. And I thought, well, we better get ready for a car charger because the kids are inheriting Teslas. This is true. So I said, okay, let's upgrade these 2 houses. Well, 3 apartments. If you've got a 40 amp breaker for an electric stove, a 40 amp breaker for an electric dryer, and a 20 amp breaker for a couple of air conditioners, and you have 70 amp service, you just hit 100 with 70 amp service. Distributed power allows that to happen and allows you to put in another stove and a hair dryer and a toaster oven and a couple of other things and hope that it all works And Megan and I were talking about at dinner about, somebody turns a hair dryer on and the breaker pops, okay? But 70 amp service is common for these old houses on the hill. If you want to electrify the whole house, including the boilers and hot water heaters, and add car charging and air conditioning, none of these houses has central air, you need 200 amp service. So how do you get 200 amp service? Well, first of all, Excel cannot provide 200 amp service right now. So Excel is a big problem in this genre, but I did this twice. I got Excel to come out and do a plan. You have to get a designer. They come and do a plan. They tell you what it's going to take to do 200 amp service. I had one house that had two meter panels. That one we could upgrade because we took all the house onto one old panel and put in the new panel with the new breakers. Not done. And we were able to do that on that house, but Excel doesn't allow you to add a breaker panel now. This is in their blue book, not yours, not the city's older. So if you want another breaker panel on your house, you can't get one. Nobody can get one. So I have another house up the street, had one meter.
Are you almost done? Mike?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I had one meter and they said you can't do that. We had to add a meter to the garage. The upgrade on the two existing meters cost $14,322. And I don't have the 220 service because Excel never dropped it. And I still don't have service on the garage 10 months later. So my point is, this is a very expensive project. I'm all in. Everybody's all into electrification, but we've got to have Excel on board.
Thank you. Tiffany, do we have anybody dialing? Okay, we're gonna close public participation and now let's switch to healthy buildings. Crystal?
Let's see. I've got to see if I get this right on this sharing. It's going from the presentation mode to sharing into Zoom. Any advice? Start with one or the other.
Share into Zoom and then go to presentation.
Okay.
Or let you do it.
And then we'll just, thank you, I appreciate it.
Turn on the.
You said right here. Okay, great, thank you. Wait, oops. Come on, you can do it. There we go. I think you're up.
Great. Well, thanks for having us here tonight. We'll do a quick intro of the team and talk about our roles. And I'm Carolyn Elam. I'm a senior manager in our climate initiatives department. I manage our energy systems work. Been with the city for the last 7 years. I appreciated hearing the public comment and I think it's very relevant to our conversation tonight. So I do appreciate that. I'm joined tonight by Crystal. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Crystal Launder and I am on the energy team, but my role is, I guess it tends to be a lot about like this type of public facing project, but also energy equity.
And then online we have Laurel. Laurel, introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, I'm Laurel Matry. I work on the energy team on climate initiatives. I have about 15 years of building energy management and sustainability experience. And I've been with the city for 5 years, focusing on building electrification and efficiency.
Great. Well, thanks, Crystal. You want to go to our...
Yeah, I think quickly, I always love to say, like, if you just look at these big point here, see all those buildings, they all exist in Boulder right now. So like, we're not talking about new build, we're talking about existing buildings.
Great. So I think as Crystal noted, we've been at addressing climate related issues, greenhouse gas emissions associated with our buildings for a long time. So what you're hearing tonight is a reflection on our past work, where we've been successful, where we've been less successful, what we've learned, as well as a look forward into what we know about the latest science today, what it's telling us we need to do as a community related to our buildings, and some of the strategies. And we'll talk about the process, but just really want to appreciate you making time to speak with us and provide your feedback on this topic. So just go to the next one, Crystal. So I think everybody's familiar, the community's been adopting climate-related goals since 2006. The most updated goals were adopted and supported by City Council through resolution in 2021. These goals are all informed by what science tells us. So the science tells us that, if we as a community and communities like us don't reach a point where we're putting no more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, then we're taking in through our natural systems. We're going to reach the tipping point where we realize catastrophic and irreversible climate change. So as a leading community, here in the industrial world, we set our target to reach that neutrality point by 2035. So that's our mitigation goal. But more important, as we've reflected on our more than decades or 2 decades of climate work, we also know our role as local government is also to help our community be ready. We're already experiencing the effects of climate change. It's having material impact and disruption on our community and communities like us. And so a lot of our work is still around making sure we're doing our part in mitigation, but it's really strengthening and shoring up our community to the effects of climate change, what it's going to mean in terms of continuous rising temperature, continued decline in our air quality, risk of disruption of our energy infrastructure or other infrastructures, and how does, in this case, our building stock sit within that entirety, from how do we reduce the emissions from our buildings to how do we make them more resilient and make sure that they're provide the healthy and safe spaces we need them to provide for our community, which is why we're talking about healthy and resilient buildings, not emissions-free buildings. That's the nuance and some of the shift that we've had as we talk about our programs and strategies. Next slide. From an emission standpoint, though, buildings are our single largest contributor to our emissions. And so we do need to tackle them. Obviously, our commercial buildings represent and less industrial represent the largest. Our buildings also contribute to declining urban air quality. So they are responsible for roughly 5% of ozone formation in the Front Range. So that's gas combustion appliances operating in buildings that are contributing to that. So those are all factors that we're really taking into account. So why we're here and talking with you all is, you're the experts in this housing arena and understanding housing policy. And, as we think about, what we've learned and where we need to look forward, we know, people spend 90% of their time indoors. And your risks being indoor and outdoor air quality, the most at risk are our youth, older adults, people with existing underlying health conditions. We also have, and we'll talk about this a little later in some of the strategies, we're recognizing that as a community, we're not ready for the continuing rising average temperatures of that we're seeing. I have a graph I sometimes show, we're on a trajectory to have a climate more like Albuquerque in the coming decades, right? And we've not designed our buildings or constructed our buildings to that type of climate. We built it to what was a high altitude Front Range community where you didn't require cooling, you could open the windows at night, cool your homes. And so we know that about more than half of our housing stock was constructed without centralized cooling. People are, using, window units or other solutions to get some cooling, but those really aren't going to be sustained as we continue to see temperature extremes grow. 25% of our residential buildings are in urban heat risk areas, so areas that we know have urban heat island effect, where we're going to see continued rising temperatures. There's less tree canopy, there's more surface area that attracts heat. So again, we have vulnerable populations in those areas that are at risk. And so as we think about our strategies to address emissions, we really need to be centering them in how we're addressing these core issues. Obviously, our mobile and manufactured housing, which we value as a really important component of our housing stock, is particularly vulnerable to some climate-related events related to wind. We saw over 400 of those homes damaged during the straight line winds at the day of the Marshall Fire. And we also know that roughly 50% of our housing stock is rental. And so we see underinvestment in our rental properties and in delivering energy efficiency, comfort, bill savings for their occupants. So those are some of the core values that we've laid out in our efforts as we think about not just climate emissions reduction.
What was that number on rentals?
So it's roughly 50% of all housing units. And I don't have the exact number, but that breaks down as roughly 30% of our single family and roughly 70% of that number are apartments, multifamily condominiums. So our question for you as we continue with this presentation is, really looking for insights as we talk about some of the strategies we've been covering, some of the learnings we've had from our roadmap process. How do we continue to balance the need to address our climate goals with other goals that we have as a community, affordability, accessibility. So really looking for you to be able to feed back to us some of your insights in that regard. And so, Laurel and Crystal are going to talk through the process we've undertaken, what we have in place today, what we've learned from it, and then I'll take back up with some of the strategies that we think are of interest and really want to have some dialogue around.
Great. So I'm just gonna move on. So I'm gonna talk about the roadmap itself. It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of what you would expect from a typical document, except it's really set to that 10-year timeline, and like some of those goals that you saw in Carolyn identified in the previous section were really like it's pinned to like how do we get there in 10 years, right? So that's why it's a roadmap, and it has policies, programs, and funding identified, and then a commitment to like what engagement needs to look like, and then those goals, of course. Let's see here, and these are the goals that are specific to the roadmap. So what, again, it's net zero emissions by 2035. Increased resilience to extreme weather and heat, unlike better indoor air quality. Incorporate equity considerations. So when some of these programs went into effect, like they said, 2018 was the adoption time for, or like the when smart rigs fully kicked in. We didn't have a racial equity plan, right? So we just incorporating some of that, increasing social resilience. So especially with our lower income community members, and other properties that we I'll talk about that in a second, but like other properties that we really value, we want to make sure to invest in really supporting those, and that's actually going to kind of get them over the hump so they are in that position to be ready for the future that we're living into. And then just stabilizing energy costs, because gas is going to fluctuate and be volatile. And there are ways to say use solar, for example, as a way to offset, but this isn't really about solar, but just and electricity is a more stable cost over time. So what we've done so far, we began with a technical analysis in July of last year. Laurel was the project manager for that. It looked at the whole building stock across City of Boulder. And then it was a policy scan like that and a financial analysis, and then really kind of looking at all of that and saying how do we take all of this and then turn it into something that would produce that 2035 outcome. And this is why we have some folks here from BARHA that participated in the testimony, is we've been in a community engagement phase, and that actually began in November. So we did these kind of deeper interviews. We did 20 focus groups. We had a community-wide questionnaire. And this, now we're at this like kind of final step of just going out to some of the other boards that we know and departments as well, that to say like, to just check in and get your feedback before we move ahead. And then just to kind of put a finer point into what we're saying about how this, you all being important. These are the stakeholders. They should look like people that you might have come in and make public comment here, right? So mom and pop landlords, low to moderate income tenants, low to middle income homeowners, fixed income older homeowners, BARHA, also people who are the, just HOAs, for example, so there's just, it's buildings. There's a lot of different stakeholders. So that's why we've had such a robust engagement process. And one of the other things that is relevant to you all is the equity guardrails. So part of what we want to do is be mindful of those buildings that are serving people that are in that, the equity priority groups. We also want to be mindful of cost burden. There's a lot of different ways that cost burden can come up. It could be because a building isn't efficient, so you could actually create more cost savings by just investing in purely in efficiency, in making a building more efficient. All electric solutions can also create a cost burden if there aren't ways to kind of offset those costs, right? And then cost relief for lower income households. And then we know that gas is, again, we were talking about fluctuating costs. And then that risk of offsetting rents or like the cost to the person who's renting to offset the that investment. So those are all the issues we're trying to solve as we're looking at this. And then there's a whole workforce component as well. So I think this is now a handoff to Laurel.
Yeah, thank you. So now I just want to go through what have we already done? What's in process now? What are existing programs? Next slide. So we consistently update the Energy Conservation Code. And I think we have some of the more progressive and kind of up-to-date code in the state, thanks to the work of people like Carolyn. And those have pretty high energy performance standards for new construction and renovation, not really for existing buildings so much, where people aren't doing significant renovation. We also continue to operate the Smart Regs program, and these are rental housing energy efficiency standards. And they're required when a homeowner or a landlord applies for licensing. And most of the landlords in existing buildings have already met these energy efficiency standards by 2018. At this point, we're looking at anybody who applies for a new license would have to meet the standards for Smart Regs, and that's kind of a checklist that they have to pick and choose certain efficiency measures to complete. Next slide. Another program is the Healthy Resilient Mobile Home Program. That's a grant program that I administer. And that's something that we actually started as a response to the Marshall Fire high wind event. After the destruction from the fires happened, we heard from mobile home communities that there was a lot of damage due to the high winds that were recorded along the Front Range. At the time, I partnered with Crystal, who was in housing, and we basically developed a grant program to assist homeowners who had significant damage from the wind event. And we've served at this point over 260 manufactured homes and repaired these homes in the city of Boulder. And we've also partnered with Boulder County. They've provided some funds for us to do some work in some of those adjoining communities as well. We work with Boulder County and we have worked with Boulder County to design a program called Energy Smart. And that's a one-stop shop for home improvements. They also help to facilitate our rebates and incentives. So we partner with Boulder County to kind of stack incentives if you live in the county, and then stack incentives with City of Boulder. They also provide technical advising to homeowners. It's been a super great service for individuals. Saves an equivalent of about 1,600 homes of energy use annually. We have a partnership, a fairly significant partnership with Partners for a Clean Environment, and that's a Boulder County group of employees that provides the same kind of advising to businesses, nonprofits, and multifamily housing owners to perform energy upgrades and to access our rebates and incentives again. That saves the equivalent of about 2,500 homes energy use annually. Next slide. In the world of equity guardrails and programs, Energy Smart definitely works with low-income homeowners, and we provide no-cost upgrades for up to 80% of area media income households. Within that program, we also partner with a group called Energy Outreach Colorado to perform a lot of those upgrades, so that the breadth of our outreach is kind of magnified. Within our partnership with PACE, that's the group that focuses on commercial buildings. We have a specific equity priority buildings program. We offer larger incentives for equity priority buildings, and a lot more handholding as those building owners kind of work through upgrades, and also work to meet our building performance ordinance requirements. And then the same thing, they also work with multifamily housing and affordable housing projects around energy efficiency and electrification. And I talked about the Healthy Resilient Mobile Home Program, and that's been amazing. We've been able to provide no-cost energy upgrades, things like roof replacements, skirting replacements. It's really focused on building envelope. And then the kind of next phase of that will be focusing on electrification, energy efficiency inside the home. So a lot of these folks are living with, 20, 40-year-old furnaces and, no air conditioning, maybe a window unit, maybe a portable cooler. So that's something that, we'll be focusing on that as the next phase. Once we kind of got through with wind damage, we realized there's still a heck of a lot of need out there in the manufactured housing community. So that program will be continued. Next slide. Okay, now Carolyn's gonna present our potential policies and programs.
Yeah, so thanks again. And as Crystal mentioned, we hired our consultant group to go out there and do a policy scan and look at programs throughout the country. So what other cities and communities have undertaken, what they've learned. And they came back to us, based on the building stock here in Boulder, based on the demographics and kind of the gap we have between where we are today and where we need to get to by 2035. They came back with a set of policy recommendations, and that's what we've been doing engagement around to understand. I want to be clear and transparent. It's a huge undertaking. Like, if we are literally going to get from where our buildings are today to hit our goals, a lot needs to happen. I'm going to ground you and ask you to have some belief with me. I've been at this game for a while, and I remember, back when we said the utility was never going to get more than 5% renewables on the utility grid. It was impossible. They were never going to be able to get it. And, today, like, we're not even having the conversation about cleaning up the grid. That's happening. So sometimes when we lay out these visions and start to focus in on the things that get us some big progress, we gain momentum and some of those barriers come down. But I just want to say we're also grounded in the fact that, we're not going to go out and propose regulation tomorrow that makes everybody get rid of their gas furnace. We're talking about, like, what's the balance we need to strike, what's feasible within the financial constraints we and the building owners and renters have to get us as far as we can in ways that will help drive systemic and market change. So that's the ones I'll ask you to view these from, so that we're, not too afraid. I went through the building code update and I know everybody thought we were coming for their gas stoves and we're upset. So that's not the space we're in. So thank you. But at the same time, I'll just share my personal equity journey. I've worked on like building codes and energy codes for years. And I remember I was guilty of this too. We're going to put the most stringent building codes on the most affordable houses, the big ones, because they can afford it. That they're the big energy users. And what I learned is we gave the most affluent people in our community the most resilient buildings that we have. When utility prices were skyrocketing, when gas prices were doubling a couple of winters ago, their utility bills were zero because they had solar and they were all electric homes. We can't make those mistakes anymore. We need to make sure that we're prioritizing our strategies and just providing the support through financial solutions and programming to make sure what we're doing is actually giving the most resilient building stock to those who are most vulnerable. So that's also Carolyn's personal journey, because I kick myself for being part of that for years, but at least I learned.
Carolyn, just quick question. How do you want, what would be the best way to go through this?
I was just gonna walk through some of the strategies, then maybe we can pop back if people have questions. Does that work? And then we can have some discussion around them.
Okay.
I'll just give you some of the context of what they mean, and a little bit of what we're thinking, and then, yeah, definitely come back and ask questions. But if there's anything pressing or you have a different preference, please just let me know. So we have smart regs in place today. And again, this sets a minimum performance standard for our rental properties. You had to score a minimum number of points. I will say it wasn't an overly aggressive thing. About 50% of our buildings already met the requirement and about 50 had to make some improvement. There is an opportunity to think about how we refine that and bring in new requirements that we would again phase in over time and work with our rental property owners to implement. That could be deeper efficiency. I've raised this issue of the absence of cooling. That's particularly prevalent in a lot of our rental units, particularly when we start to talk about our apartment style housing, where there's a lot of barriers to having robust cooling solutions. So we are thinking about cooling access. One of the benefits of thinking about that is if we also specify that that needs to be a heat pump, we're starting to support electrification as well. We star the ones that we likely want to pursue through further discussion and design. So when you see this star, we haven't made the decision today, but these are ones that we're probably going to recommend as things that we continue to develop. But we certainly welcome your feedback on that. Many communities are adopting building performance standards. Many of our over 50,000 buildings in Boulder right now are subject to state requirements that set a performance threshold for the building. So you can only use so much energy per square foot. You have targets. You have to lower your energy use by 2030, 2040 to meet those standards and make those improvements. That's imposed on building owners. We have a form of that in place today. It doesn't apply to multifamily housing, but we certainly are interested in thinking how, given we already have state regulation, given we've already had local regulation, how can we bring these together and adopt a similar policy here? So vision, everybody needs to bring their apartment building into no more than 40,000 kBTU per year or per square foot as kind of the requirement. And then we layer in supportive programs that help them make the right investments to get there, is what that would look like. Energy improvements. There's programs around time of sale. So there's all sorts of opportunities, whether it's disclosing the energy use of a building and requiring that be presented to potential buyers, to actually requiring that you bring that building up to a certain performance threshold at time of sale. That's certainly of interest of thinking about whether there's opportunity, although it again only touches a fraction of our building. So we're a little bit in mixed on whether that one would be something we would recommend. Next one, Crystal. Certainly the most economical, cost-effective time to make a transition is when you're already making an investment. So there is an end-of-life replacement approach where in our building codes, we would start to, for example, if you're replacing an air conditioner, that would now have to be a heat pump that could provide heating as well as cooling. Or, when you're for sometime down the road, not tomorrow, when your gas stove breaks or your furnace breaks, you'd have to get an electric one. Understanding there's barriers to that, just for clarity, but that's certainly there are logical times where this is going to make sense, and I anticipate we would move forward with something on some time horizon. So by 2032, this is what it would look like. By 2035, this is what it would look like. Crystal could probably talk about this one a little bit more than I can, but thinking about simplifying how people can be successful in designing solutions and efficient options. So there's pre-approved high-performing ADU designs. That could be something we could facilitate so that anything new, which is in our current code subject to less stringent requirements, like we've made it easy to build it right, build it well, build it resilient. One-stop shop, continuing to enhance how we help navigate our codes or regulations, set people up for success, particularly if we're going to impose more regulation, then we need to support that with ways to be successful, getting permits, understanding what the requirements are, accessing rebates, and so enhancing those services. Next one. Okay, so Crystal, you want to talk about this one?
Sure, yeah. One of our consultants who was in charge of the engagement side of things was thinking about, because they work broad, that she works broadly on the Topic Housing Institute for the Built Environment. So she's aware of what's happening with Proposition 123, which I know you all are. If there's a board that knows more about that, it would be this one right here. So one of the kind of questions we have that she raised, and we've gotten some feedback from staff, but we were curious your thoughts, like there's this the potential for naturally occurring affordable housing to kind of count towards your housing goal. And so the question is, we could potentially like kind of tailor services to that space, and then it could be beneficial to kind of demonstrating that we're meeting our, not the local goal, but the Prop 123 goal. Does that make sense? So that's
Can you a little more actually?
yeah, so Proposition 123 kind of mandates, or not mandates, they ask you to kind of, can you explain it, Jay? I'm gonna pass it off, but probably
Go to French.
how the goal setting happens specifically.
So, well, there are a lot of different components, but Prop 123 basically says that to be eligible for this $200 million a year in tax money, local jurisdictions have to meet certain requirements. And one of them is to have a goal for affordable housing, but they don't consider deed restricted permanently affordable housing as part of the goal. It's just what's affordable to a certain income. So that's kind of where Crystal's going with this. I mean, for us, it's challenging as a community because our land costs are so high and our housing costs are so high that all of our naturally occurring affordable housing, it's getting small. That number is getting smaller and smaller every single year.
And I think the opportunity here is to think about how, as we're imposing requirements and offering programming, can we potentially create carrots? So say, you have to meet this requirement. Here's money and services to meet the requirement, but to access those, there's some concession that you're making. Or, I mean, I think that's just one of our thoughts is like, how can we bring these things together to be supported? We don't have it solved, I'm just hypothetically showing that.
So Prop 123 is a lot about new construction projects, correct? And
Yeah, there's two things though. There's like the housing, when you're goal setting, it's about reaching your housing goal.
okay.
So that goal is kind of not defined the same way that that Boulder defines it. And so there's this murky category of naturally occurring, and a lot of rentals actually keep their rents at or below 80% AMI. So like they could, like a lot of rents just naturally fall in that zone. So that could be, we could say like, hey, we'll kind of cater specifically to those landlords that have that. Or that the other thing that Carolyn was referring to is if we were to fund landlords, maybe have some kind of rent stabilization requests or like kind of discussion, because it's gotta be a conversation, but about, making sure that rents don't escalate after all that investment has gone into a given building, you know?
The city of Boulder has an affordable housing goal of, what was it, like something like 12%?
15.
15%. Does that come on something like this, the Proposition 123, or where does that come from? Was it just pulled out of somebody's?
That's just that's a Boulder goal. And that is for permanently affordable. And so this whole concept of naturally occurring is really like a state, a state idea that may or may not be, as Jay was kind of referring to, be a match, except it may make Boulder look better if we were to do like some focus on that area.
Do you know what, it says market rate rents at or below 80% AMI. Do you know what that monthly rent amount is?
I could look it up on the rent. I can, if you want, I can look it up quickly on my phone.
That doesn't refer to the income of the owner, that refers to.
The rent on the property, right?
But the rent is set at 30% of the income of the
Right.
resident.
An area means it's AMI changes from.
I know what AMI is.
I'll look up the
Yeah,
table
so
and I'll
if
give
you,
you a
so if
couple
you have
examples.
the 100,000 roughly, which is the 100% AMI for a one person household. So 80% is 80,000. And then 30% of that would be the monthly rent, unsubsidized rent. That's what the market rate rent is.
Yeah, and I'll give you that table. I'll look at the
So,
table.
so I can't do the, what is
2,400.
2,400, thank you.
I have a question on that same. Can I follow up on that
Sure.
same? What percent? You said that there are a lot of rental housing in Boulder that meet that criteria right there. What does that mean? What percent of our rental housing? And is this part of BHP's portfolio or is this the market? It just says market rate.
So it has to be
I'm curious
market,
what
so
that is.
it would not be BHP.
It might be, there might be some. I think there are some, like what they, this is a, they call it attainable. There's like a term.
Yeah, like,
Right, so what's the percent? You said that a lot of them meet that. What percent is that?
I would say, I mean, I remember we did, when I was working with Jay, we did a middle income housing strategy. And I mean, it was a good share of here, let me give you the rents. That'll start to answer your question.
On the rent, so I can try to answer the
The percent, yeah.
So when every time we look at this, we look at it for a range, 80 to 120%. And about 98% of all the rentals in Boulder are affordable to that range.
Yeah, but this says below.
Right. So
Oh, so it's 20, it's.
Less
15
than
to 20.
98%.
So here's an
It's not a
example
lot, it's a few,
for,
it's some.
for,
yeah.
yeah,
And BHP is separate because BHP only serves.
What is
60%.
80% AMI rent for one person household?
Well,
$2,400.
well, so for a 0-bedroom home at 80% AMI, 0-bedroom meaning like a studio, that would be 2,110 a month.
Okay.
If you went to a 2-bedroom, that'd be 2,700. 3-bedroom would be 3,100. 3,500 for 3-bedroom.
Are you assuming the bedrooms are people?
No, the calculations are a little bit, there's like, there are assumptions that are made between incomes and rents. So I'm not gonna like go into.
We didn't create a calculator.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're not necessarily 1-for-1. It depends on what size unit it is and how many pounds it's all different.
I like tying them together because if you think about forcing a landlord of a NOAA property to make improvements, they're likely going to increase their rent to accommodate, right? And so I think that makes sense. I don't know that that should be the driving factor, but I think having incentives to voluntarily restrict your property is a good thing. That's my personal opinion.
So
you talk about incentives and you talk about rebates, like, where is the money coming from for the city to incentivize owners or landlords? And how much money is that, or what percentage of, let's say, some of the costs that need to get incurred to get it from where we are today to where you need to be? Like, is it 20%? Is it 50%? Is it 3%? Like, the burden, how is that cost burden shift?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in there. So we can't buy our way out of the problem, just to be clear, right? So to retrofit a property, let's just say, you're going in and you're gonna have to replace all the heating and cooling equipment, which you're gonna have to do anyway as a landlord at some point in time, but we're maybe increasing what you have to pay by $5,000 or $10,000. I'm just making those numbers up. These are not the numbers from the analysis. We'd have to pull that up. But that's an incremental cost that we know will have impact. We can give you a rebate. We can do a group buy program. So you're actually, instead of paying $10,000, you're paying an increment of $6,000, and you have to agree to prorate that over a certain time frame to participate in the program. So the city's not necessarily bringing money, but we're bringing a program and an easy way to comply. We can bring financing offers, similarly, like, we'll help you pay for it. We partnered with this bank, and they'll give you a low interest loan to pay it. But again, to access this, you have to agree. So there's this spectrum of tools that we can find out, which are the most meaningful, which have the greatest effect, because we know the city doesn't have unlimited resources to provide rebates. We do have rebates, and when we implemented smart regs, we did provide a substantial amount of rebates to landlords to help mitigate some of those costs, and a lot of those folks went and accessed them through our Energy Smart programs, and those have come out of historically the climate tax, or we've gone out and gotten grant dollars. I understand this is not the climate to get grant dollars, but hopefully, in the future, we have till 2035. There might be access to that as well.
Well, going back, I just wondered, how did the city of Boulder calculate 15% affordable housing goal? That was one question.
It was a policy choice that previous city council made. Originally, it was 10%, and then about 6 years ago, they raised it to 15%.
And that was based on what?
The whim of council.
Okay.
So the idea was you can create a goal that is achievable, or something that's aspirational. And they chose sort of a combination of the two.
So it wasn't based on like what?
It wasn't based on the actual need or being able to provide housing for everybody who wanted to live in Boulder.
Okay. And then I have a second question about the funding. Like, you talk about rebates. I in the Mapleton Mobile Home Park, when we had our infrastructure upgrades, for water and electric and all that kind of stuff, it was significant. It was over $1 million, and we got a fair amount of funding from the sugar tax. And how available is that?
Yeah, so most of our rebate money, and we have invested roughly $2 million a year the past couple of years out of the climate tax in grants or rebates for this program. So between the mobile home repair, our commercial programs, so that all comes out of the climate tax, which is the tax on utility bills. We have not explored like whether the sugary beverage tax would be a source. I mean, I certainly think that there's opportunity to look at other sources of funding. I do know that alone, because we're not going to come up with enough money to do everything. I do think that there's other tools, like I said, financing products or turnkey solutions that make it easier. Like, I think all of those, and we certainly see programs like in California that have had success at getting landlords, because you've offered this and made it easy and reduced their financial burden, to make an agreement that they will control how they allocate what they have to pay and how they adjust rent.
And I have one more. As far as, building relationships with partners like Excel, where they become a barrier to the upgrades that are necessary. I know on a mobile home, you can't put a solar panel up there because Excel said no. And so like how do you work with providers like our utility providers so that people can actually achieve these goals?
Yeah, I appreciate that question a lot. If you Google Excel in Boulder, you're gonna get my name, because one of the roles I have is to manage our partnership work with Excel. And so I hear from a lot of community members and we try and work with them. So I appreciate the barrier. One of the things we're doing right now with Excel is they have an application of the Public Utilities Commission right now. So the Public Utilities Commission is who regulates Excel. And they've put together a plan that would allow them to better invest in the infrastructure to make it ready for electrifying buildings and transportation. They've been behind the 8 ball a lot in terms of where we are. It's fallen on individual customers to have to drive the upgrades. I listened to this. I probably even know where you live. I think I've heard the story, by the way. And this way they could take a more systemic and holistic approach, look where they have constraints on the system, proactively make investments. It obviously comes at increasing utility costs, so there's got to be balance there. But at the same time, we know that if they don't make those investments, none of us can be successful, and it can't keep falling on individual customers to make the improvements that are necessary, whether it's to install solar or not. It shouldn't be, because your neighbors came before you, they didn't have to pay those costs, but you're the next customer on, and now it's a problem and it's your problem. So that's a plan. It's going to be litigated at the commission over the coming months. We'll be filing a lot of testimony in tomorrow into that plan to provide our perspective on it, and we'll participate. So I think that, that's one of the pieces of making sure they're ready. I think there's other parts around getting them more integrated in our comprehensive planning to understand like where these issues are going to surface before they surface. So there is a lot of opportunity. I don't want to promise. I mean, there's still a for-profit utility. They make decisions. Their bureaucracy. There are those challenges, but certainly we try and problem solve when the issues are coming to us as the city organization.
I'll offer my thoughts for my fellow board members and for you, although these are just my thoughts. I'm curious to see how other people on our board feel. I'm generally opposed to increasing the regulatory burden that property owners in Boulder face when it comes to building codes and efficiency standards. I think climate change and the environment and efficiency are all very laudable goals, and it's something our policymakers, especially at the federal level, should be more focused on. But when it comes to our community here in Boulder, we very much have a housing affordability crisis. And I think there can be no argument that these endeavors of increasing burdens will increase costs for property owners. And we've heard from landlords tonight that they will face increased costs, and there's no doubt that will be passed on to renters and lower income people. And that's just not something that I think our community can tolerate right now. So I'm very much opposed to increasing the regulatory burden that property owners face when it comes to building codes. I just don't think for affordability purposes, that's something our community can tolerate right now.
Thank you, Chip. You gave me a really good lead in there. So I am also a mom and pop landlord, and it's on a very small scale. It's a 420 square foot ADU that we created by converting a rec room in 2017. So we met all the energy codes and efficiency standards for appliances at the time. And the rent is way lower than the prices you've quoted both on the month. Having rates in a long time, I think we hit our market. It's always young people with entry-level job, nursing student currently. Seems like out of nowhere, we got a notice about 2 months ago saying, you're gonna have to upgrade the rest of your house to the energy standards of the ADU. And, you gotta hire an inspector and they'll tell you what to do. I haven't done that yet. I don't know what it's gonna cost. Or if you don't do it, you're just gonna lose your rental license. And I'm just like, why is this happening? Like, we're thinking of just like fixing the ADU because it's not worth the hassle. And, we're supposed to be encouraging people to create affordable housing, not take them off the market because of, like you said, it's really a regulatory burden. I don't know, this might be a very idiosyncratic case. Maybe there's like 3 people in North Boulder, the situation, but I don't get it. Like my neighbor next to me has pretty much the same house with an ADU. They don't rent the ADU out. It's a like family guest room. So they're gonna have to face this process. And, it just seems really counterproductive to me. And I haven't looked into that deeply. I could be off the right track on this, but it doesn't look good. And it seems like we have some goals that are at loggerheads here. And we don't want to do that. And I totally support the climate goals. I get it, but I don't understand why our non-rental property that we own is being, driven towards this conclusion by the rental property, which is already super efficient and inexpensive and is doing everything it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, I'd like to connect with you offline to understand more because that comes as a surprise to me. So I need to do some research. I think that's good, a good data point for us to understand. Yeah, I'm curious, can I ask a couple of questions for you both? So, I understand housing affordability is an issue and I understand regulatory barriers have a component of that. I think it often depends on when we're intervening. So one of my questions for you is, if it's at a point in time where you're already going through a regulatory process, like
A renovation.
or I have to replace an appliance. And the requirement is just a different appliance with, and here's the incentive to help you buy down the incremental difference in that price. Do you have the same perception then that that's too far of reach? Does that feel better? Like, where are we on the spectrum when we talk about that?
Yeah, I think regardless, it feels like overreach. I think to the extent we're posing higher burdens in our neighboring communities, that's a problem. Again, I appreciate the climate goals and our global focus, but Boulder is way more expensive than the rest of the state. There's a lot of types of people who just cannot afford to live here and move out. And, from my perspective, I moved to Boulder 10 years ago. I lived in naturally occurring affordable housing as a student. I could feel the wind blow through the walls at night. I moved to Denver and I moved into a new nice building that wasn't that much more expensive. And then I moved back to Boulder and moved back into an old building because that's what I can afford here. And, that's a cost associated with Boulder, but I pay more for an older building in a less efficient building than what I lived in Denver as a tenant. And I'm okay with that because I want to be in Boulder. It's just the practical reality. If you impose these burdens, it's just going to cost more for the landlords. It's going to cost more for the homeowners. And it's just going to drive up housing costs. And there's certain policies we enact, for example, like our eviction prevention rules in Boulder. That's a cost on landlords, but the benefit goes to tenants, and that promotes, equity and affordability and all of that. I understand there are benefits associated with these costs, but they seem to be more like lofty climate type goals. Sure, everyone would love to live in more efficient housing, but it's not affordable in Boulder. And I have deep concerns that regardless of what point the city's intervening, it's just going to drive up costs. If Michael wants to fight the city over his ADU, a lawyer's gonna cost them between $300 and $400 an hour. I mean, this stuff just tumbles out of control. Boulder's too expensive and we shouldn't be making it more expensive for property owners or tenants.
I guess I have a disagreement or comment or whatever, like, if I need to buy a new a new roof or new windows or new furnace or something, and the incremental cost, you're gonna help reduce that amount, then of course I would prefer to do something that's gonna help the environment going forward. But at some point, like Chip is mentioning, if the incremental cost is significant, then I may not, then my wallet isn't worth the environmental cost. So to the extent that the city can help reduce that incremental cost for like doing the right thing, then in theory, none of us should object to that lofty goal of being more energy efficient. But to me, it all boils down to money. Like, where does the money come from? So rents shouldn't have to go up if the landlord is being able to do the more energy efficient appliance at no incremental cost as the city subsidizes.
I do have to say that I actually very much agree with Karen. But I do have to say that there are other municipalities that are doing similar things. The city of Denver, for example, they're about to outlaw gas furnaces. And so it's not just Boulder.
I have a question about,
I think these climate goals are really good. But when I look in like just my mobile home park, and I think about, the mobile homes that have been upgraded, given heat pumps. But they're in like pre-1974 homes. And the windows haven't been upgraded. The insulation hasn't been upgraded. There was just a heat pump put in. And I know from 3 residents that said that they're going back to, a furnace because it's not, they're not getting the same heat generated in the winter, from the heat pump as they would with a furnace. And so that's kind of like money just flushed. And then those homes, the money is going into putting heat pumps in, the 3 homes that I'm thinking of, are pre-1974. And so the money has been spent on putting heat pumps in them without upgrading anything else. And the life of that mobile home is very short-lived. And so I just see, the money going out the door, getting flushed down the toilet. And I just wonder, going back to, there are more pressing issues that, people, in my neighborhood, have their ceilings are caving in, their windows, don't open, or they're the crank windows, that's single pane, or the plastic windows. And I think it's like putting, I think we've just tumbled over, some much larger problems in order to reach some of the climate goals. And I guess I worry about that, because I think that they're very noble goals. And, I would love to have solar on my home. I got my home through the flood recovery program, thank God for the flood. There's just a greater need out there for people to be in homes that don't have mold. But they're getting heat pumps. So I just wonder about that.
do you know how Denver is incentivizing landlords and homeowners
So I
to
don't-
do the green things?
Yeah, I don't know about it from a small scale, single family homes perspective, but I do know that with large multifamily development, It's
New.
any day now
New.
and new.
But they have
Yeah.
end of life replacement
Yeah,
requirements
and
too.
that too, yeah. So
Hmm.
any day now, they're gonna say no more gas boilers.
Yeah.
And anytime you need to replace your boiler, it has to be electric. So all the buildings that are being developed now, they have to be electrification ready
Yeah.
at a minimum.
That's an interesting distinction you brought up. That when you get to new construction and an end of life of equipment, that's a great time to upgrade, especially if there are subsidies available. But you know, retrofitting is a lot harder and more expensive. And as Karen said, where's the money come from? On the other hand, if we don't address climate change, we're all going to die. So we need to do something.
There is that little problem.
Right. But also to the extent we addressed this at one of our last meetings, like that it's phenomenon in Boulder where people are tearing down buildings. I mean, there's a certain, eventually buildings, most buildings aren't gonna last forever in Boulder. Maybe some of them because they're pretty. But eventually a lot of buildings in our community are gonna be replaced. And I think when that happens, we have to ask ourselves, is it the role of the government to say this is how you know, in terms of efficiency, or is there just from the developer's perspective, I'm tearing down my, you know, mid-century house to build something new, I'm probably have my own incentive to spend some money on a more efficient home at that juncture. You know, does the government need to be imposing that burden for it to happen? I don't know enough about buildings to know the answer to that, but you know, it seems like new buildings tend to be more efficient regardless of what the government says, just because
It's codes.
that's.
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah,
our new buildings are gonna be built all electric. I mean, we have an all electric code. They're gonna be built highly efficient. So, but one of my challenges, and I pose this to you all, is, so what happens what is gonna happen as that transition continues to occur? Right, is we're scraping down existing structures, we're putting in new highly efficient ones. And then you have the ones that are left, right? So as we take all of these, you know, former buildings and put the new ones in and pull them off the gas system, there's fewer customers paying to maintain that same infrastructure. So we have all this gas pipeline running through our city that we pay for. And you know, 50% fewer people are paying for the same amount of capital. That means the people who can't afford to scrape their homes off, who can't rebuild the brand new ones and don't have the financial capacity to build the nice homes, are now seeing a doubling and tripling, and actually the numbers are worse than that as you look at it in the forecast of their utility costs, because they're the ones left bearing the financial burden of the infrastructure that serves them.
And that in itself creates an incentive to then change once it becomes too expensive, because I'm paying all this money for my old gas house. I'll go electric, but that nice developer comes by and says, I'll give you $1.5 million for that piece of land your little house is on. And they build something new. I mean, isn't that the market reality?
Well, I guess that's the perspective.
But then you're getting rid of the naturally occurring affordable.
Can I answer the question you asked rhetorically? And I'd like to amplify ML's retort to it, which is, I absolutely think the government's role is extremely important in creating regulatory stuff for houses and efficiency, like your point. Maybe just make it again.
Well, just in response to, yes, the government's gonna mandate it because we have codes. We have
Right.
energy codes, we have building codes.
But are there
But
like,
does it have to do with the
correct
bigger
me if I'm
picture
wrong, and
of climate?
Developers don't typically make choices about environmental sustainability out of the goodness of their hearts. They generally do the minimum they have to be above the code.
Unless
but-
there's incentives.
so
Unless
there's,
there's
and
incentives.
educate me, but there's uniform building codes, correct? And then there's codes that perhaps the city of Boulder imposes that are even more stringent than that. Is that,
So generally, the way the codes work is we adopt the uniform codes, whether it's energy code or building codes, and then we amend and insert, things. The big codes that we adopt are upgraded every, 4 years? by a very, very robust and rigorous process. So these codes that we adopt and then amend are state of the art. So it's not like we're starting with something mediocre and trying to
Right.
bring it up to our
And the
standards.
point, I'm not saying let's burn up all the rules and the laws and the codes, but should the city of Boulder be posing that much more of a burden than
And it isn't.
peer
The things we
communities?
add,
Or the state thresholds that you spoke of earlier? The state already has efficiency thresholds. Should we be imposing a greater burden when we have such an affordability crisis here? I'm not saying we should have no laws or codes. It's where do we draw that line, of course? And we can look around at our peers, we can look around at the state and say, are we imposing a greater burden that's contributing to already? I'd say Boulder has a bigger affordability problem when it comes to housing than our peers. So, you know,
So is
that's,
the trade-up then for you, like, okay, we're gonna promote more affordability, but then we're gonna be more at risk for environmental issues because we're not being proactive? Like, it seems to me that a lot of what we're discussing is which priorities are more important than others and how do you evaluate the trade-off? So affordability is important and environmental sustainability is important and promoting, you know, ADUs is important and they overlap. and
it's
at times
absolutely a
they
trade-off.
conflict.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
And the point I'm
I guess-
making
I
is,
guess-
for city of Boulder right now, I think affordability is a bigger, more pressing problem than climate change.
can you,
I,
I think,
I
sorry.
want to go back to an earlier slide in your deck, but it seemed like there was a list of potential regulatory innovations, and one of them related to large homes. There it is. It looks like adopting building performance for standards for larger homes is off the table, which puzzles me a little bit, because I think you said before, like they're the people who can afford it. And when you build a large home, it has a bigger environmental impact, so like, why not?
Yeah, so some of our thinking around this, and you all are absolutely encouraged to challenge us on this, is when it comes to building performance standards, you have to measure energy use per square foot per home. There's a lot of reporting and requirements. And so as we look at the first chart, one of the earlier charts we had, like where the bulk of the emissions are versus the type of building stock, right? We see from a reporting, it's far easier for a 50,000 or 100,000 square foot commercial building to report their energy use and to demonstrate compliance with the building performance standard than for every single house that's 3,000 square feet. The other thing is, particularly with the larger homes, almost all of the larger homes here in Boulder now were built under our, yes, they are much more stringent than peer communities, although peer communities have caught up to us. So we've led the way for years, but everybody's catching up in recognition of, you know, these issues around energy affordability. You know, I'll also just offer, yes, stringent codes can contribute to increased cost. The amount of that relative to the total cost of building something or the affordability is something I think is a topic for conversation. So I hesitate to throw out regulation and attribute all regulation to affordability or energy code in particular to constructability and affordability. Because I think, you know, we can look at labor rates as part of, like, if it's costing $700 a square foot to construct, there's labor components in there, there's property values, there's all those other things that contribute, but it's still hurt. I just want to acknowledge that's some of the feedback we need to hear is the reaction to potential regulation, but just want to ground us that we do unpack as we think about building codes and MLC, that some of our presentations as we've done building code updates, we do look at the incremental cost of what that code is going to require. And we do look at how that delivers in terms of long-term savings back in reduced utility costs. So we do try and create that balance, and we would certainly carry that forward here.
So what would you like from us? Like, this has
This
been
is
very
helpful. This is very
informative
helpful.
and there's been like, I think, really interesting pros and cons. And so you're not asking for us to like advocate or vote on anything or?
It's not an advocate or vote. I think you've given us some really valuable insights and perspectives and some of the very tensions I think we wanted to hear. I appreciate don't throw money at something that you're not holistically addressing, around, like, just don't put a heat pump in a port building. You gotta address the envelope, lead with efficiency. That's certainly one of the notes I'm taking away.
Yeah, I think, I'm just curious, is anyone really excited about the topic of adaptive reuse? To say that's a great idea or like, that's really very impracticable to actually make happen.
So we've had discussions about adaptive reuse from office to residential, and it is something that's of interest to us, but we were not focused on the energy efficiency of it, but there is a program called CPACE, which and that's an interesting thing because for people who don't know, basically, like, if you are building a new building or you're renovating, and there's certain like qualified expenses, then you can get like $1 million for those expenses, and it gets paid out over 25 years with like a tax assessment. So your taxes go up slightly, and that's how it's paid back over 25 years. So if you're an office owner, that is part of your triple net CAM reimbursement. And the thought is that the building is more efficient, so some of the other expenses will go down. And so the tenants in theory aren't paying that much more to pay that back, but I don't know. So in theory, you could use CPACE for adaptive reuse, right?
CPACE and the similar carrot conversation we had on the naturally occurring affordable housing. I mean, I think that there's this nuance of, regulating, empty commercial spaces that have been empty for a long time and trying to encourage adaptive reuse.
I think it's just gonna be pretty limited. I don't think there's gonna be a huge utilization rate of it.
Because of the challenges related to the conversion.
Yes.
Although we have explored it as like, if you aren't looking at it as like a market rate apartment and you were looking at it more like SROs or like co-housing, or then it might be more viable, but that's a totally different.
And I'm just can I just push this like a little bit more? When I first moved to Boulder in 2007, it was like soon after they rezoned the frontage road on that had been like all the hotels, like the Outlook Hotel and all that, and then it became rentals, right? So I just that because there are all these like, I think adaptive reuse is a complicated topic, but like if there was like a rezoning, it would enable a residential use or conversion, would that spark any more interest? Would there be ways to facilitate it, or do you all have thoughts on that?
I think it goes back to that concept of, if you're doing a renovation, if you're gonna have to spend money anyway on something that's more energy efficient, then that's an opportunity for you to make people like indifferent, right? Like if you can reduce the cost differential between a green furnace and a non-green furnace, like do the green one. So in adaptive reuse, that's like a remodel. It's an opportunity to encourage people to do the right thing by reducing the incremental cost.
Well, if we're rezoning commercial space into residential,
Or just enabling it in that?
or you're tearing down a shopping center and putting in housing, which is something that happens in Boulder. I think that doesn't necessarily affect the naturally occurring affordable housing. You're not tearing down an old cheap building that people are living in and putting it nicer one.
Yeah, although in this case, we're not talking necessarily about encouraging tearing down
It'd be just reusing
the building.
that shell.
Adapting building.
We're talking about adapting this in this
I really
context.
encourage you to watch part of the video of that session. We had 3 developers, and did a panel discussion. They're all in the process of trying to adapt vacant commercial space into residential. And, you know, they were not pessimistic about that, but they were very honest about barriers, some of which were regulatory. And some of them are common sense, like you gotta have better fire codes for, you know, a residential building versus a commercial building, but.
What video was this?
Excuse me?
What video was this?
It was a video of our meeting about
Oh.
4 months ago. You wouldn't have to watch the whole thing. It's probably a half an hour of the whole meeting. We learned a lot and, you know, it's a challenging topic. And I think to Chip's point, you know, regulations are not evil, but it would be nice to see them be oriented towards producing something rather than always, you know, stopping things from happening, which tends to happen sometimes. So I think that's a philosophical way of looking at it. It's kind of the abundance argument that's going around now.
If I can just offer, what we have seen come through planning board in the last year has been a lot of upzoning. So a lot of areas of town where housing was not previously allowed is now allowed. And that is by intention of this city council to provide more housing. The downside of that is who's moving in to do that are the developers that are providing market rate, which really looks like luxury housing or student housing. And they're bringing new models, the national models. They don't rent student apartments by the apartment, they rent it by the bedroom. And so these, we're getting maybe more buildings built, but they're not falling into solving, you know, the problem of where are people who have this 80% AMI going to be finding housing. And then coupling that with our climate goals, which is really the point of your. I have a suggestion, and you may have this, but I didn't see it in the presentation. One of the things that is very useful when people begin considering, okay, there's new regulations coming, or there's new ways of thinking about what we do with our buildings. Do you have, or is there in the works, a strategic options? So, you know, the low hanging fruit. And that speaks very much to what you were talking about. It's like, where do you start? And for whether you're a developer, a builder, a homeowner, most people don't think holistically. That is not a common, that is not a common approach to making change. And so if in part of this rolling out of options, you could create something with big picture options that drive down to a detail. And the detail could be the replacing of the, you know, furnace or the cooktop or the windows, but to understand the interconnectedness and really the effectiveness of doing one before or after the other, that would be a very valuable tool for people to understand, how can I kind of get the most benefit for the amount of dollars I'm going to put in today, and not have to come back, you know, in 3 years and say, oh, I messed up, I should have done. I mean, it's just, people don't naturally think this way. And if you offer them a means, I think you're going to start seeing some meaningful results, and people might be more willing to say, oh, I get it. You know, today I'm coming in thinking I want a new door or a new window, but really I should be thinking about this because of, and you offer the logic. And so people have a tool, because we're trying to incentivize us out here, right, in the world to make change when we are bringing new buildings or renovating or whatever the role is. But I think we need the intelligence that you have in your research that would benefit.
Oh, great.
I know we need to clone Carolyn, basically, is what the
No,
challenge.
I think you have the start of the slide and I like that. I like the suggestion of making it more tangible.
And so people can make good choices, not just a choice, but a good choice.
Yeah, I have a few comments. One is, I've been a renter since 2007 in Boulder. And I started off at Smiley Court, which is not under city purview necessarily. It's at Thurston, Colorado's graduate student housing. Extremely inefficient. And electricity and heat was included in the bill, so nobody had just incentivized the wrong behaviors. I lived in a place on Shanahan Ridge that had single pane windows, and the frost would build up. And I live in a place now that is up to smart regs, but it's still like I can feel the dread. Like if it was my house, I would invest the money to make it environmentally sustainable. I really care about the environment and about my carbon footprint. And I don't live in Boulder because I'm willing to pay higher rent for drafty apartments. I just like it's weird that the incentives are so misaligned that I have to spend 20 years renting places that I feel like don't meet my own expectations about how I feel about the environment. And I think there's a lot I don't want to say I speak for all renters, but I just want to point out that renters care about the environment. They don't want to live in drafty buildings. They want to have low and reliable energy bills. And so I applaud moving in directions where we have more sustainability. I think the smart regs are great. That's kind of just a broad comment that, and just to add on to that, like, I've always felt like, if I was an owner in this city, then I could be environmentally sustainable, and I really care. Like, I don't own a car. I bike and bus everywhere, and I ride my clothes on hangers throughout the house, clothing racks. And I wish that there was some way for the care that I have about reducing my carbon footprint could somehow be manifest in the housing market I participate in, which I just feel like really incentivizes people to do the very bare minimum with respect to whatever codes are in place. So that's kind of where I come at this. One of the questions I have, this is my laundry list of things I've been thinking about this evening, but one of the questions I have about the natural gas is when you talk about the fire codes and what, the WUI and the, how we're gonna prevent the next big fires from tearing apart large parts of Boulder. How does the natural gas system fit into that? Is that an exposure of risk to the city, or is it because it's buried underground and it's like there's not enough oxygen for it to explode? It's not a big deal, or
Disconnected at the house.
Yeah, no, I mean,
is that true? So when there's a big fire risk, the city just, or the Excel turns off.
I think during the Marshall Fire, they shut off the gas, because a common problem then people had is their pipes froze. After the fire, because they shut off the gas, all the heat, houses lost heat, but the benefit of that is that thousands more houses burned down. That's my understanding.
Yeah, no, the way it usually works is, so the fire starts and the first homes it hits have gas.
Yeah.
And the gas contributes to the growth of the fire.
Okay.
Right, so you're exploding the gas that you're creating a leak, it's igniting, it's burning. That depressurization of the system then triggers the utility to shut down the system, because they know that there's an a massive leak. So by the time, it, like the fire burnt into, the Marshall Fire, by the time it kind of got, I think it was still on in the Sagwatch neighborhood, but as it got farther, by that point, the utility had shut off the gas system, but most certainly the gas system contributed to the conflagration that occurred.
So then it just seems like there ought to be a way to align the risk of having natural gas pumped up in this giant grid with the difficulty in getting the insurance that is getting more and more expensive. I don't know, maybe there's some alignment there that could be kind of like leveraged a bit more somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely need to look at the future of the gas system. Much of our community's gas system went in roughly 70 years ago. It's at end of life, rated life. That's why you're seeing a lot of projects around town
Right.
digging up pipelines.
Casing it at our cost, and we're all going electric.
Yeah,
I'm kind of like I'm kind of a peculiar little hobby horse that I just referred to, and then a more general question about this. But I actually don't use the dryer in my house because it's so dry in Colorado that you can just, I just hang it up in the closet about an inch apart and it just dries overnight and it provides evaporative cooling. In contrast, using the dryer that we have, it's like a 6,000 watt 6 kilowatt, for 1 hour. It's like way more electricity than I would use for my e-bike for a week. That's for 1 hour. And not only that, but it's like you're pumping heat into your house, in adversarial role to your air conditioner, which is, trying its best to keep up. And so I just want to make a statement. I think dryers are bad. We don't need them in Colorado. Stop using them, everybody. And maybe there's an opportunity around education or just social pressure or just I don't know. To me, it seems like a no-brainer, but I think everyone's got this mindset that, oh, I should have dry clothes in the next 45 minutes.
All the HOAs that we're allowed to hang our clothes outside.
so I will tell you, Boulder was part of making that a state law that HOAs can't ban your clotheslines. Yeah.
The dryer also serves the purpose of getting dog hair out of clothes. So if you have any tips on that, I'll take it.
So then my kind of bigger question that I use this as an example of is most of what you brought up feels like political, economic, cultural problems about how we we have the solutions, but how are we going to implement them? How are we going to roll them out? I guess the question I have is, do we think we have technological problems still? Do we have all the solutions and we just need to implement them, or is there real technological challenges that we need to address? One of the things that came up was shade. Why can't we retrofit buildings to be passive solar with the right kind of awnings, or I don't know, or white roofs, or so I thought I'd just throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'd say we're on a spectrum in terms of technology solutions. Certainly we have all the technology we need to convert residential homes and most commercial homes. The barriers are making sure it's done well and done right. So there's still a lot of training, quality control, experience and design so that it gets done right. So that's it. There are still applications that there's not good technology solutions for, particularly in industrial loads, or that the solution is not a good solution, because it's just going to be so challenging to implement. Is it really accomplishing the total goals? So, I mean, I think technology is continuing to evolve, but certainly if you do it well, you tighten up the building, you put the windows in, you put the insulation, you put the heat pump, everything's somebody who knows what they're doing. Make sure they're properly connecting it so the coolant stays in the line, you know, all those things. Your home will be fine, it'll be comfortable, you will feel better than you did in the home, you know, with the gas furnace and forced air, like all those things will happen. So quality control is the real thing there. You are correct that it's not just about electrifying home, it's about efficiency, it's about passive solutions. I think all of that has to be part of the equation.
And I think that kind of goes back to Cindy's earlier point as well about, I mean, the efficiency is a big opportunity. It doesn't have to just be.
Yeah. We should always lead with efficiency for the less you use, the better it is. The lowest cost, lowest emission energy is the energy you don't use.
The negawatts.
Yeah.
Incentivize clotheslines.
Yeah.
I was gonna, when you were talking about thinking holistically, as the, how we start thinking is thinking holistically, but when, as a low income resident, and I know that I have, many of my neighbors are in the same boat. It's very difficult to think holistically when you're dealing with an emergency after emergency after emergency. Like the refrigerator goes out, I can't think about a grant, I can't think about a rebate, I just need it, and I have $24.92 in my account. How am I going to replace the refrigerator? And how am I going to replace the food? And what, and it's very difficult, and I think about, my gas stove. I don't want an electric stove, I want a gas stove. What am I going to do if the electricity goes out? How am I going to, I'm not going to a hotel, I'm staying in my house. I need to be able to, my furnace is gas. It provides, heat for me. I'm very, very hesitant to think about what it would mean to get one of these, heat pumps, because I know that right now I'm warm in the winter, and I can't compromise that. I can't even think through, what it would take to have a heat pump, and it didn't work. Like several of my neighbors say that their heat pumps aren't working, aren't producing heat in the winter. And I think that there are just so many more pressing issues. And when you're thinking about even, end of life stuff, end of life, on my dryer, which I use, because I'm not gonna think about, hanging my clothes up and making sure that they're dry and they're coming back, and like, I just need to get them done because I need to go to work, and they just need to be done. And I have other things that I'm thinking about. It's just very, very difficult to think holistically when you are, there are so many more pressing issues. And I know that it's just I just feel like there are so many more things that need to be addressed before the climate. And
Yeah, I was hearing you say that some things could be solutions, like, for example, you mentioned the refrigerator going out like that. I mean, there are Energy Star models of refrigerators, right? So like, I mean, that could potentially,
Marketplace.
what's that?
You get what you can find for $24 on Facebook Marketplace.
Mhm.
Or is somebody, getting rid of theirs, because they're upgrading, so I'll take that, non-efficient refrigerator. If you're giving it away, I'll take it because I need it.
But that could be potentially be a point of solution.
Yeah.
Too, would be to just have ready options.
Yeah.
Yeah. The kind of the emergency response.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the great
so much for your time.
conversation, yeah.
Thank you.
If you could take yours down and.
Yeah.
Relate to your conversation.
You guys are welcome to stay. We're gonna watch a 17-minute video on the history of.
Thank you very much.
As much as I would love to.
I actually am, I was like semi-enticed, but I.
My four-legged children are at home wanting dinner, so.
I like that. I'm thinking, wait a minute, what's she saying?
They're waiting to Band-Aid,
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Thank you. Live in the building. It's here.
Mel, do you have public comment?
Pardon me?
Do you have public
We
comment?
do, and I can't remember the last time people come virtually. And people being like one, maybe two people, but in the room, other than the applicant, we haven't seen real people for a while.
Are we all queued up for that video when people come back from the?
Yep. I think I'm ready. Find out.
Did you bring the popcorn?
Yeah, I did not bring pop.
That is fun.
We should probably get another snack then. There's salad.
It's popcorn.
Yeah.
Sorry. The simple answer is 0. We're owner occupied.
Okay.
But somebody can rent their unit.
Okay.
But our bylaws say they're restricted to doing it for a year at a time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But if somebody wants to rent longer than that because of whatever circumstances, they need to bring the request to the community. And that has happened a couple of times and the community's approved.
Okay.
But we do have, so we have 34 units
Yeah, okay, why don't we get started?
in them.
Oh, like.
That like
sub-renters?
I guess like housemates.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And actually, I'm gonna take that back. We do have, so we have one unit. This makes me really happy, actually. So there's
Alright,
that owns the
let's
unit,
go.
and they're going to spend
I gave them warning.
for at least a year.
What are they doing?
I have
What are they doing?
right now.
Schmoozing. Okay. Tiffany, can we start, please? Or Jay, can we start, please?
Well, I'm gonna give a little introduction.
You want to ramble them?
Yeah.
I think that's your job.
Michael.
Yes, that's how many people should do. I was telling you they did.
You should hold them in, you should hold them in contempt to the House Advisory.
Yeah.
Let's just,
It's a nerd. All right.
let's just start with that.
Well, the folks that are here.
You did now, there's no.
I did. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm ready.
Need a goblet.
Yeah.
I mean, we had one at one point.
All right, so we were thinking that it would be nice to have a conversation about this presentation that was done back in 2021. So this is something that the Housing and Human Services put together. It's a 3-hour event. So I'm only going to show you 17 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But just for context, so there was Joe Neguse gave some introductory remarks. Our mayor gave introductory remarks. So did our our housing director. Clay Fong developed this presentation. Well, we developed it together, but he gave it and he does a much better job than I could possibly do. But then we also had we had a panel discussion afterwards, which was also fascinating. So if it does pique your interest, I would encourage you to watch the whole thing.
Is it on the city's website?
It is, the whole video is on the city's website, Housing Equity Symposium.
Send the link to the hub,
I'm sorry?
send the link to the hub.
Sure.
In
Yep.
case people want to watch.
Yeah, I will.
Probably great.
So yeah, and my thought was we could watch it, and then if you had thoughts, questions, just to start a conversation about it and think about how the history of Boulder has influenced our.
So were there any outcomes or policies that came about because of this symposium? Like, did people have a aha moment and they're like, oh, we need to do A, B, and C?
I would say that it did influence the significant shift in how people in Boulder think about housing. Yes.
Okay, too.
Great.
Yes.
I think it's hard to pick a point in time, but if you look at the politics in our town around housing and affordable housing in particular, I would argue that it's around this time that there was a very dramatic shift in communities' perceptions and who showed up to argue for housing policy.
When did you say this was?
It's 2021.
21. Okay, thank you.
I mean, it started before this, but I would say this really sort of catalyzed things a little bit. Anyway. You ready?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Hope to have this right. My name is Clay Fong, and I work for the City of Boulder's Department of Housing Human Services. I'd like to welcome all of you here tonight, and I'd also like to thank you and acknowledge that this is not necessarily an easy conversation that we'll be having tonight. And a lot of people do feel uncomfortable about it, and I just want to acknowledge that feeling because part of my personal journey in exploring these issues gave me those feelings of unease as well. This is not an evening for finger pointing or for accusations, but rather for all of us to mutually explore some of the darker chapters in our community's history and what we might do to remedy some of the harms caused by that and to move forward. So I look at this audience as one of allies and friends with a common commitment to improving what is happening in our community for generations to come. So with that, we have to ask the question, why are we looking at this particular topic? Why are we looking at our history? Why are we looking at race and class? Housing, as we all know, is extremely critical for an individual's prosperity. It is oftentimes the single most largest asset an individual owns. It's a tool for building wealth and equity. And housing is often a determinant of one's prosperity and one's health. Housing is related to one's proximity to education, healthcare, their workplace, other things such as recreational amenities that have a profound impact on quality of life. And so it is a very significant determinant of, one's well-being and those of their families. Purpose, as I sort of mentioned earlier, is really to start a new conversation moving forward. And I hope that by looking at the past, we can craft a better future. A helpful lens to look through all of this is the intersection of myth and policy. While I think a lot of us are far removed from the classic Greek and Roman myths of such things as the Minotaur and the Medusa, there is a pervasive John Wayne-inspired Western myth that is very much about what this country, particularly communities in the American West, are all about. The American narrative is very much informed by a myth of manifest destiny, a myth of rugged individualism, a myth of equal opportunity. But the reality is things such as manifest destiny often have an underpinning of religious justification and, to put it bluntly, that of white supremacy. And by tackling these myths, we're going to be able to look at how can we make things better in the future. Most importantly, myth also informs a long legacy of covert racism. We've used that to cover things up. And as if we can kind of strip away from that myth, we can see that things that we had assumed were somewhat benign actually have a racist and exclusionary impact. It comes as no surprise that one of the people that I like to refer to in this particular presentation is Professor Ibram X. Kendi. And he very pointedly notes that the actual foundation of racism is not ignorance and hate, but self-interest. So a lot of things that might be cloaked in high-minded rhetoric or some of this American mythology really boil down to a particular group benefiting from certain policies pertaining to housing, the settlement of the land, and ultimately more seemingly mundane but impactful things such as zoning and environmental regulation. Let's start with the prologue here, which is the Treaty of 1851, Fort Laramie, also known as the Horse Creek Treaty. Like many treaties at the time, this did not require indigenous nations to give up land, but simply guaranteed a safe passage for people that were, dominant white Americans that wished to travel west. Part of this was from an economic interest. We have mineral wealth in the West and access to, say, the gold in the California gold fields and minerals also in Colorado had led to this being sort of a policy imperative. One of the key parts, though, of this treaty is no land was ceded at this point, But we'll see very quickly the history is such that this key provision of the treaty was broken. And to a great extent, we benefit today from that particular breaking of the treaty. So this is the first part, which really talks about how Boulder came to be in the period right before and a little bit after the Civil War. So the California Gold Rush takes place in 1849. Always had been a bit of a rumor, though, that this place called Colorado might have similar mineral wealth. And sure enough, in 1858, July, gold is discovered near present-day Inglewood. Doesn't take long for the word to get out, because by October 1858, we have the first white settlement in this area located near Red Rocks Park. Chief Niwot meets with the settlers, and this is kind of one of those areas where history still possesses a lot of ambiguity. What we do know is that Niwot initially approached these settlers and said, hey, you can't really stick around here. But then what happened next is subject to some historic debate. Some say that he never changed that position. Others said that he did concede that, oh, yes, you can stay. But if that did happen, there's also a question of what was the reasoning behind that. And some believe what that was driven by was a feeling that the white settlement of this area was inevitable, and to be cooperative early on might result in less negative consequence for the indigenous peoples that have been here since time immemorial. Of course, the stakes get higher when gold is discovered in Gold Hill in 1859, and a month later, the Boulder Town Company is founded. The Boulder Town Company really, I think, is where the die is cast for what becomes the modern community of Boulder. They parse out 4,000 lots. Each of these lots cost $1,000. This is before the Civil War. Agricultural land, off to the east and up to the north is more on the order of a few dollars per acre. So we can see already we are establishing Boulder as a place that's not necessarily inclusive for the working person or the person who has limited resources. This also sets a little bit of a precedent for there not being heavy industry within Boulder. We don't have the intensive agricultural operations or the mining that you might see in some of our neighboring communities historically. Things start to move fast. Boulder becomes a territory in 1861. We see legislation placing the university here, and this is against the backdrop of the Civil War. Emancipation Proclamation happens in 1863, and at that same time, tensions between indigenous peoples and the newcomer, white population, tensions start to rise. This is a really critical point in Boulder's history. In 1864, the Colorado 3rd U.S. Volunteers, Company D, mobilized at Fort Chambers. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Fort Chambers, that is located near modern-day J Road and 63rd. And this is where local leaders, among them, trained for what ultimately became known as the Sand Creek Massacre. It's also, I think, worth crediting that community groups such as Right Relationship have done quite a bit recently in helping to illuminate some of this dark history. Sand Creek Massacre is essentially an unprovoked attack on innocent people. There's no legitimate defensive military or offensive military objective at play here. The high numbers say that 600 people were killed. It's hard to tell, probably the numbers that most people agree upon are more in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 people killed. Key players, and we'll talk a little bit more of them, are John Chivington, and to use sort of modern parlance, he's kind of the big bad of all of this. He was a Mason. There used to be a historic plaque commemorating him up in Gold Hill. And David Nichols. Chief Niwot dies a few days after the Sand Creek Massacre of wounds that he sustained. This really sets the stage for, the conflict on the plains. This, in a very legitimate argument could be that this is the fuse that ultimately leads to the Battle of Bighorn, or as the indigenous peoples refer to it, Greasy Grass Creek, in 1876. But this is kind of the thing that lights the fuse. So it's very significant and has a local tie. Again, we have the backdrop of what's going on. Civil War ends. The post-Civil War constitutional amendments come into play. This becomes more important in the ensuing decades, and we'll return to that. Boulder in 1871 incorporates a clear violation of the Horse Creek Treaty. Colorado becomes a state in 1876. CU opens in 1877. As many of us know, at the time, communities were vying for who would be home to certain Colorado institutions. We get the prison or the university. Some say we lucked out and got the university. And I'm grateful we did that because we wouldn't have our speakers here tonight. Some of the key players include Nichols, who we had talked about had been implicated in, had a heavy involvement, unapologetic, in the Sand Creek Massacre. Prior to his commission in the Army, I believe as captain, he was sheriff of Boulder, but resigned that commission of Boulder County so that he could take that military leadership role. The establishment of the university is another step in cementing Boulder as a place less for the working class, less for industry, and more more leisurely setting, for lack of a better term. A couple of real quick points about Nichols. Nichols, if you look at what he did, he's not a good guy. To put it mildly, I see my CU colleagues agree. Professor Patty Limerick at the University of Colorado posits that, but at that time, that was part and parcel. You would build communities, you would encourage the development of the church, but you would also kill indigenous people, and all of those were viewed as virtuous things. And we'd like to think that's an outmoded way of thinking. In 1961, the university decides to name a residence hall after Nichols. This isn't because, we found this information later on. I think people full well knew what Nichols was all about. And it wasn't until 1989 that Nichols Hall was renamed Cheyenne Arapahoe Hall. So I think that's very telling with what's happened in sort of our community. So to summarize, and I will grant it's a gloomy picture. Land was taken from indigenous peoples. We institutionally sanctioned the taking of land by the formation of the town company, the incorporation, statehood, and much of this is accomplished through the use of military force. There weren't payments and negotiations. This is simply brute force under the wing of the U.S. Army. Exclusionary policies start to come into play. High land prices make it very limited who can live in Boulder, who cannot. And again, this moves away from the working class. I know this picture is provocative and disturbing, but it also reflects a reality of what was happening in Boulder, particularly in the 1920s. So we will talk about the rise of Boulder as a community, but not for all. One of the key documents in the creation of modern Boulder is the report done by Frederick Law Olmsted Jr. about the development of Boulder in 1910. Everything Olmsted writes sounds really good. It sounds like, oh, this is the blueprint for the community we live in now. This quote that's up on the screen right now is he's talking about, basically, Boulder is a place where it's an agreeable place. You don't necessarily have to be super rich, but it helps to take advantage of what's here and have an agreeable life. In more detail, he sort of decries industry, pollution, and all the sort of dirty things that come with it. And at the same time, he's a proponent of what's known as the City Beautiful movement. The City Beautiful movement sounds great. It's about open spaces. It's about grand shared spaces. But what I didn't realize, because I had heard about this, and Olmsted was actually responsible for some development in my home Bay Area, was that this was a reaction to immigrant communities, tenements, what was perceived as sort of the dirt and filth of all of that. And that, sorry, I get a little excited, but I will slow down. Thank you. I get a little passionate. So what happens is that we have this very nice sounding rhetoric, but the reality is this was all sort of a myth, a cover for Olmsted was a pretty unrepentant segregationist. Quote that I think is very telling. Racial divisions have to be taken into account. If you try and force the mingling of people who are not yet ready to mingle and don't want to mingle, the development cannot succeed economically. Let's break this down a little bit. It's a pretty darn paternal statement, first of all. He's making this judgment. But we don't care about society's greater good. This is all about the economics. This goes back to the notion of self-interest that Kendi talks about. This goes back to all this beautiful language, a beautiful vision of what the urban space should be. It's really something that comes down to economics. That's what this is really about. Meanwhile, in the rest of the country, we have the 1970 case of Buchanan versus Warley, which is essentially overturns racially based zoning because it is presumed to violate the post-Civil War amendments dealing with equal protection. Sounds great. At the same time, the administration of President Woodrow Wilson is getting a little concerned, like, oh, we need more working people to have houses, but at the same time, we need to keep certain people away from that. Russian Revolution sort of prompts that. So while racially based zoning is deemed unconstitutional, somebody figures out, hey, there's other ways we can keep these undesirable folks out. And so that comes about through programs that are aided and abetted by the federal government that use an economic basis to sort of, and in 1921, the city adopts zoning ordinances that are sort of around single family homes and density so as to make it less accessible for people of color and immigrants. The president of the National Association of Real Estate Board says, and who was part of this, as was Olmsted, and was part of this commission that was under Vice President Herbert Hoover, a realtor should never be instrumental in introducing into a neighborhood members of any race or nationality whose presence will be clearly detrimental to property values in that neighborhood. It's all about the money, and it's all about keeping certain people out. Meanwhile, in Boulder, university's been open a couple of decades. Very limited diversity. It takes a couple of decades before we have the first 2 Latinx students graduate from CU. Very small African-American population, very marginalized population, not surprisingly. There's not a lot of opportunity. Unsurprisingly, the census reveals that most of the things are going to be working for African-American families and people as day laborers, janitors, servants in white homes, and bellhops. There's an area called the Jungle, which is now Central Park, which was a district of rundown homes and temporary housing. Very hard for people living there to find the upward mobility to get out of that particular situation. We also see in 1914, the first African-American student graduates from CU. Continuing the timeline, African-Americans are prohibited from living on campus until 1940. We see with the sort of demolition of the Jungle, we have an area called the Little Rectangle, which becomes African-American, and also we start to see a rise in Latinx population. There's segregation in the movie theaters. African-American folks can't get their haircut here. They're prohibited from going to some shops and restaurants. That prohibition is lifted when the university threatens to have shops and services of its own. 1950, the African-American population actually decreases from 1910, while the overall population has doubled. This is also playing against a lot of institutionalized racism. This is the same period in which the Tulsa Race Massacre happens, and as we'll talk about, we're going to talk about the prevalence of the Klan in Boulder. I'd like to start, though, because I think history in a lot of ways loses its relevance unless you can relate a few personal stories or stories of what happened. This woman is Lucille Buchanan. She was the first African-American woman to graduate from CU Boulder. At her graduation, she is sitting, waiting for her name to be called. Out of nowhere, a woman comes and says, "I'll be your partner in this, Lucy," and hands her her diploma. The time for her name to be called comes up, and it is never called. So she is not allowed to walk at her own graduation and receive her diploma in a public setting. She leaves the university vowing never to return again, and I understand that she pretty much upheld that promise until her death in 1989. Recently, I believe a local author has published a book about her. I have yet to see that, but I would like to look more into it. We had a rise in the Klan. The Klan was considered legitimate both in Colorado and in Denver. In the 1924 election statewide, the Klan dominated many state offices. This emboldened the Klan. There was large-scale open Klan parades, demonstrations here in Boulder. Initiation rites involving hundreds of people all took place within our community. At the same time, we also see hate coming from other institutions. 1900s saw a rise in the number of Spanish-speaking laborers, particularly engaged in agricultural work. What's the reaction to this? In 1932, the Boulder County Commissioners passed a resolution funding the deportation of Mexican families to the United States-Mexico border based on there being no prospect of them finding employment. Now comes the modern era. Federal housing policies. It's still not great. In the post-World War II era, we see things like underwriting policies and the like that, yes, we do not have racially explicit zoning, but we do have ways that prohibit people of color and other communities from gaining a foothold and access to owning a home, which, as we all know, is the way to build equity and wealth. Lending practices are challenging. And again, this whole land of opportunity piece that we've all been sort of inculcated with, it really proves itself to be a myth. It wasn't until the 1960s that national legislation set the stage to dismantle some of these things. Court cases such as Brown versus Board of Education, which overturned Plessy v. Ferguson, which held that separate but equal is constitutional, and the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1968 Fair Housing Act. Meanwhile, in Boulder, we continue to grow. We have, developments in various parts of the community. The turnpike, changes things quite a bit. This is where we also see, the recruitment of clean industry, places like NIST. I talked with a colleague in the city and she said, the only real industry we had kind of in that period was like a knife factory. So there wasn't a lot sort of going on. At the same time, we have a lot of different regulatory things coming in. Most of you are familiar with this blue line, building height restriction. And we see a few glimmers of maybe breaking the sort of chains of the homogenous community. The election of Penfield Tate II, but we also see sort of a backlash with the Los Aces bombings in 1974, all amongst this thing of creating more and more regulations. I want to next talk about this notion of environmental veneer. And I think this is a difficult part of the conversation to have. And I say that as someone who the first half of their career was in the environmental field before transitioning to working in human services. This comes from Justin Farrell, who wrote a book some of you might be familiar with called Billionaire Wilderness. And he describes environmental veneer by saying the simplistic popular assumption that environmental conservation is assumed to be an altruistic good rather than a vehicle for protecting wealth, achieving social status and integration, expressing group identity, sustaining societal advantages, and generally reinforcing many of the social mechanisms that give rise to environmental problems in the first place. So I think it's a call a little bit to look beneath the hood, so to speak, and see what is the impacts of some of the policies that we've had. A lot of this is sort of my opinion, but hey, that's why I'm up here. In a lot of ways, I think Boulder is a Silicon Valley suburb. We, in terms of our ethos, our industry, we're not rooted in things that are happening in Denver or Pueblo or Salt Lake City. It's tech. We are experiencing, and Laura and I have discussed this, a phenomenon called aspenization. We are an extremely desirable place to live with environmentally protected scenic landscapes. Young people are excited at the prospect of coming to Boulder. What this means is we become increasingly unaffordable, and people like teachers, firefighters, police officers can't afford to live in the communities that they work in. I won't get too deep into this, as many of you are sort of familiar with, but these are some of the changes that we've had that a lot of us would say, oh, these are good things. But if we dig deeper, what does this mean for exclusion? What does this mean when we talk about who's able to live here? It raises some questions. And the part that makes this so pervasive is this isn't inconsistent with things like Frederick Olmsted's rhetoric and those other things. So we have a pretty nice through line that, hey, this is all consistent, all seems pretty good. And I want to choose my words carefully here, but all the things that make Boulder a desirable place to live were somewhat motivated by self-interest. And I think that's a real important piece to look at. This I'll go through more quickly also because I'm horrific with numbers, but Boulder's an expensive place to live. This is how we stand compared to the state itself and other communities that are close to us. Renters face a lot of challenges. If you're renting a place, it's much more expensive to rent a one-bedroom apartment here in Boulder. But the problem is, and this is the trap, your wages aren't going to be much better than if you work elsewhere. So you're going to have to work 54 hours a week as opposed to 44 hours a week to be able to afford a one-bedroom apartment. And, you know, you just have to make a lot more money. So that really changes who can live here and who can't. This next slide, I have a little bit of a challenge with, but while it seems that we're getting more diverse, apparently because the data folks have sort of enlightened me on this, is that the way that the census looks at how you report your identity is such where you can do white and other. So it actually appears that we're more diverse because of that classification, but my understanding is the reality is, you know, that's not the case. So that's not something to keep in mind. And certainly I think, you know, we're not looking at the large scale diversity like, you know, our guest Lisa Bender will discuss about what's going on in Minneapolis, which is very markedly diversifying is my understanding. So Penfield Tate said the measure of a great city and a great country is not the size of its green belt, but how it treats its people. And I think we see some issues with that if we look at the community perceptions assessment that was done in 2017. I just want to do a few quick quotes. We don't have economic diversity. There's hardly any middle class here. Anyone that earns less than $60,000 a year has to be very creative in how to live. There's no diversity in terms of housing costs. It's true. People can't afford to live here and buy what you need, basic living supplies. Very few CU staff can afford to live in Boulder. Some faculty do. For staff, there is not a sense of community. This is a place they go to work. This affects how they feel or how they interact. One thing that has helped us, though, to create some solutions is affordable housing. We've seen the number of affordable homes increase in Boulder thanks to the efforts of local government and community partners, and we have some fairly ambitious goals to increase that. We have a rare opportunity now, and you know, I think a lot of people in this room will participate in sort of changing the course here, to turn the tide and address the consequences, both intentional and unintentional, of past planning-related decisions and how we can remedy some of those pieces. The news is good when it comes to affordable housing and diversity. What you see is more diversity in terms of people that live in affordable housing versus that of the general population. And you also see that you have people with a broader range of median incomes, so it becomes more accessible. So all critical pieces as well. There's a general consensus among the community that affordable housing is a key part of helping to make Boulder a more welcoming and inclusive place. And just so you know, we're in the home stretch here, so I'll be wrapping up soon. How do we look ahead? I'd like to go back to Ibram X. Kendi. He defines racial inequity as when two or more racial groups are not standing on an equal footing. So when you start seeing large disparities, like who owns a single family home, and you see one group's up here and another group's down here, that's when you have racial inequity. More important, he defines a racist policy as a measure that produces or sustains racial inequity between racial groups. And an anti-racist policy is any measure that produces or sustains racial equity between racial groups. And here's the challenge here, is that we did a lot of things with the best intentions. We wanted to protect our built and natural environments. We wanted this to be a good place to live, but the problem is the past had set a stage that impaired our ability to look at the impacts of these things critically. Your Olmsteads, your Manifest Destiny, that all made it much more challenging for us to look at this through the critical lens that would help us to build a more equitable and just community. I would like to conclude with hopefully what is a bit of a hopeful note. Again, I don't want people, because I have given this presentation before and people that I deeply respect say that their immediate reaction to this is shame. I don't think that's where we need to be. Professor Anton Troyer, an Indigenous scholar from Minnesota, says, all human beings have dark chapters in their personal histories, and all nations have dark chapters in theirs. Nobody should be stuck in shame. However, it is important for all countries and individuals to examine dark chapters in order to learn them and prevent them from recurring. Thank you.
Feels like a different era.
You're saying the COVID era and youth?
Well, I mean, from what he did, the leadership of our country is so on board with this message.
I was thinking that too. He predicted the future. This is fascinating.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Is he still with the city?
No, Clay actually left to go work for the county for a little while, and then now he's with the federal government.
Do you mind summarizing why you wanted us to watch it?
Because I think it's thought provoking. I think it's important for people to understand the history of housing in Boulder. So like every person we hire at the Housing and Human Services, we make them watch actually the full 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I think most people just have no idea of, how Boulder was formed. And how, past policies have really impacted housing affordability here.
The interesting thing, my kind of takeaway is that it took a long time for us to become this exclusive, but it seems that in the decade, the 70s and 80s, there was like this window, where Martin Acres was very accessible and affordable. Newlands was very accessible and affordable. We had these parts of the city that weren't in the foothills, weren't on Mapleton Hill, weren't around the university, that, ordinary people can live what used to be out there right now. Now we're in central Boulder. But because when I came to Boulder in the late 70s, this did not feel like an exclusive community. And I don't think it thought of itself as an exclusive community. There were a lot of people, craftsmen, unskilled, not techies, not academics, making a living and owning houses and making a go of having a reality. And it's kind of like, the frog sitting in the pot and boiling. It's like then Boulder became this place that we have today. And it's interesting. I'm hearing what I'm thinking that he was proposing is that, it's been in our water all along. And this was our destiny, but
I feel like I actually heard it say that Boulder had some being exclusive from the get-go.
Right.
Not doing agriculture, not doing
Right.
industry, having the university.
I agree. It didn't feel that way when I arrived though.
Mm.
In the 70s and 80s,
But,
it was like,
I would argue that had to do with when you arrived in Boulder.
that's what I'm talking about.
So like if
Those
someone,
decades.
but I'm saying if someone who arrives in the 90s might also think the same thing. Oh,
I got here in 93 and I feel
I
like
can make it work
that
here.
was the Boulder I came to.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah,
I
but
could
you
never
could-
afford to move here.
But I was gonna say you could afford to come. So
Yeah, exactly. And Newlands was like.
what I was
just little
considering-
lane houses.
middle income people could easily come and find a house and make a life in Boulder. Now, and easily is the operative word. It's not easy to do it. A lot of people probably still do it. Renters, for example, come and find those old houses and those areas. But I think it's because sitting on planning board and watching the redevelopment, and it's like, are we getting this city that we really want? And we made our regulations, to speak to the earlier point of what role does government and regulations play? Huge role, and it continues. Wow.
It feels like it's gotten like it may have been exclusive as this indicated from sort of the get-go. But I think the supply and demand factors have gotten even more impactful with zoning in the green belt and then federal like the employers being more higher paying, whether it's the university and then the federal labs, and then Google and high tech, and then the concept of what is it, Richard, Florida, or like a creative
Creative class.
class where where it attracts people who don't necessarily have to go into an office. And now I feel like second homes, third homes, like people. So I feel like it's become less and less and less affordable and to the point where supply and demand economics will not create the community that maybe we want Boulder to be. So setting 15% affordable housing and using cash in lieu to create those units is the city saying what we want us to be. And it may be that the next step is to come up with ways so that our policemen and our firefighters and our teachers and our nurses, our service providers are also insured a certain percentage of housing, so that we're kind of dictating who we want to live there by to overcome supply and demand factors that will just price out everybody.
I think it's Instagram. And what I mean by that is I came to Boulder in 2015 to tour the law school, and it was snowing that day. And I walked out on the patio and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to live here. This place is beautiful. And I don't think that reaction that drew me to Boulder is new. In fact, I believe that's probably existed for millennia. But the difference is when I came here in 2015, I was able to take a picture of it and put it on the internet and show thousands of people across the country. And lots of people do that. And I think the reality is more and more people have discovered what is possibly the most defining feature of our city, which is that it's beautiful. And we can pass all the laws we want, but that defines our city. There's plenty of cities in America that don't have that, and people are not moving to those cities for that. And that speaks to supply and demand. People are going to want to live here no matter what, even if the windows are thin and it's crappy and there's bad housing, whatever, just because this is such a beautiful place to live. And that's a defining feature of our city. And I don't know, I hear all this history and we're, about racism. And I mean, yeah, like look at America. We have a dark past in this country that's part of our story, but I don't know. Well, I don't think that's the right approach. I mean, I'm honestly personally struggling a little bit with Boulder right now. I went to my first city council meeting in March for HAB to read our statement. And what I saw there was shocking. Like just the public comment at our city council meetings is foreign war, hate speech, angry people screaming really mean things. And then 3 weeks ago, Jews are burned alive on Pearl Street. I mean, that's literally what happened. And I watched the city council meeting that followed. They canceled public comment because they couldn't stomach it. And then they held their meeting and they each offered a comment. And there is a lot of acrimony on our city council. And I wonder, is that just our city council and our government, or is that our community that, we are so at each other's throats right now over race issues and foreign war issues and all of that. And I watch this and it's talking about our past, and I don't know where I'm really going with this other than I think there's some problems in our community that maybe transcend. I just don't know. I think there's some deep-rooted problems in our community right now, or maybe our local government.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
Yeah.
So I want to just do a time check. It's 8:30. I think most of us would like to get out by 9. I think there's a lot of, we could probably spend an entire HAB session talking about the comments of this. And so I just want to sort of open it up to people because we still have several other items. So do we want to go beyond 9 o'clock? Do we want to come back and talk about this video at the next meeting? Are there any of the other things on this that we want to eliminate? I just want to be respectful of people's times.
I would suggest wrapping it up on the video, maybe continuing the conversation at a later date and moving on with the agenda and finishing by 9.
Is that okay with everybody?
As I go into cryogenic storage at 9, if you know.
Well, I'll wrap up my comment. I guess, I think there's a lot of acrimony in our community right now. And I guess, I think like, what role can we play to do good? And maybe that's to focus on housing issues. I think that's principally what our communities looks to in our local government, is maybe not these big weighty global issues, but do we have affordable housing? Do we have public services that work? And there's a lot of city issues that are not our purview. One of them is housing, and that's one of the big local issues. And I think if we can focus on that and send that message to council, that's a productive endeavor, because maybe, I don't know if distraction is the right word, but there's a lot of issues that I think are fomenting in our community right now that don't pertain to essential local government services. And we sit on one of those essential local government services, which is housing. And I think if we can keep that front and center for city council, city manager's office, and say that's what the people want and need from their government, I think that's productive for our community.
So that leads greatly into Philip's presentation, but Cindy, you wanna?
Yeah, I just have one comment kind of related to the video and everything, but also related to some other things I was thinking about. About 10 years ago, I was listening to an economist who was presenting, I believe, to the county commissioners and or the city council, and talking about the largest industry in Boulder is the service industry. And, traditionally our lowest paid low income folks is our largest industry in Boulder. And it really concerned me when you mentioned that our affordable housing goal is 15%, and that just came off of a whim, or it was just pulled out, is this attainable? Like it didn't have any real correlation to the need. And that concerns me in a big way, I guess.
So maybe at a future meeting, we can explore the 15%, but I've actually heard that like BHP has some vacancy issues. And so I think that could be another longer discussion. Yeah. So please don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not trying to silence anybody. Like, I want to hear everybody's voice on a variety of topics, but I also want to be respectful that, like, I don't want this to go till 9:30, 10 o'clock, 11, whatever. So,
I would love to give a speech about this.
how about we save it for next?
Yeah,
Before
exactly. Well, you've maybe heard it in previous years, You haven't heard it tonight.
So do you want to talk about your update to council? Like, did everybody get a chance to read what Philip is preparing to say to city council? And does anybody have any edits, or if not, we can make a motion to approve this presentation?
I think it's very good. I think it's too long. You're not gonna be able to get it in 2 minutes. Unless you, did you practice?
I'm practiced at this sort of thing. I can do it.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe in you.
That's my concern. I have no substantive issues. I just worry about the 2 minutes. Unlike here, they definitely kick you off.
So I know, I've done it before. And I've timed it. It's fine.
Cool.
Thank you.
Do we need to make a motion and approve, like, vote on it?
I think we should. I move to approve Philip's statement unless you have comments.
No, just to congratulate Philip on doing a great job.
I move to approve the statement.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Okay, now let's go to,
So can I just make one comment?
Yeah.
I will do my best to show up at city council as soon as public comment is up and running again.
are they gonna, is it gonna be at the end or the beginning? Have they figured out?
No, they haven't figured it out yet.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'll just
Tiffany,
do it when I can.
I think they're gonna figure it out tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's on the agenda for tomorrow night.
Great.
There's been a lot of outline posts on this topic
Mhm.
this week.
Hmm.
Lots of opinion.
Saying no to the end?
Variety.
Okay.
So they want to do away with public comment. I just think it's.
No, they don't want to do away with it. They're just trying to structure it in a more productive way.
I'll just, when I went to that meeting, I thought this is such a sad state of affairs for our city, and I stand by that. It's really sad.
Okay, let's keep focusing on housing. Okay, next agenda item is the work plan. Does everybody wanna take a look at that and see, are there any comments, changes, additions?
MHC. What does that stand for?
What's
MHC.
Manufactured housing
Oh,
communities.
Okay, cool.
So you'll hear about that more at next meeting. We'll have a proposal for you on a tour and then potentially panel discussion.
I got to work.
Lots of great issues in here. I don't see a mention of the, oh, never mind. I'm sorry, there's a subcommittee, Housing Solutions for Homelessness. We got that covered.
Do we know when the clutch report's gonna happen?
August.
August.
So that's kind of our next thing, right? We're waiting for that.
Yeah.
If you want to offer any other updates.
Not tonight.
Yeah.
Do we want to add the clutch report to upcoming items?
I mean, it's not gonna get presented to this board,
Okay, oh, got it, okay.
but these guys are gonna use it for
When it
their.
comes out, Karen and I will meet, and then maybe we, after it comes out, set aside some time in one of our big meetings for us to discuss it with you all.
Will they be presenting to city council so that we could watch what like, is the clutch presentation gonna be public?
Good question. I don't know.
I think it has to be if we're paying them, the public's paying
Well,
them.
I mean, the report will be,
Yeah,
or a summary of the report will be made available for the public, but I don't know if there's gonna be a presentation. Right?
I would guess there will be, but I can't tell you for sure.
I assume the
because-
report would come out before they present it.
So the only thing that's not on here that I just found out is September, the comp plan is asked to come and get your feedback on the latest iteration of that.
I'd be very supportive of that.
Of what?
The comprehensive plan update. So that'll be September. Hour long.
When were you thinking that mobile home manufactured housing would be?
September, October, but I don't know that it needs to be September as opposed to October.
We can talk about timing. Get closer.
I think step one is get the report.
Yes, talking about two different things.
Okay.
So
But I think also with that.
yes, I think what Karen was asking about was in relation to the mobile manufactured home tour and panel. True,
Yeah.
which will be like, September, October, but different than the solutions for.
Yeah,
That's a tour of the factory, right? That proposed tour is of the factory, correct?
No.
Wait, no, it'll be of communities, but
Oh, it'll be
the
community.
factory will play in to some piece.
you guys are coordinating that, a tour.
Yeah, Cindy, and I'm helping her with that.
Cool. No, I think that's great.
Yeah.
We need more months in the year. For all the topics we want to explore.
Good problem to have.
Yeah,
Mhm.
all right.
Also working on a volunteer day for the Boulder Mod for the board members.
That'd be great.
I think it'd be a fun time.
I'm just curious, we have the new members who've been with us now for just a little while. I feel like us who've been at least for a year have a sense of issues that we're interested in, but would you guys just want to, is there anything you guys are interested in?
I think the discussion on housing pipeline, I think that should be like a fairly regular conversation, maybe like biannually at least. I like that. Just more as an update to the board on what's going on locally.
What about you, Cindy?
Well, I'm working on the manufactured housing and modular factory.
That's, putting it together.
Cool. Just wonder if there's any issues you guys care about. Other than that.
Well, the affordable housing. Definitely is.
For me, and this is more of a personal rather than professional thing, is affordable home ownership. And I think BHP is doing a really great job from a rental perspective and 60% AMI and below perspective. But I feel like affordable home ownership is a real problem in our community. Like I personally, it's much more affordable for me to rent than buy a home. And I would really love to buy a home, but just not possible. And so just understanding what's going on in the community from a home ownership perspective and opportunities that might be there.
So I did have the opportunity to attend the middle income housing summit yesterday. Yesterday. And they're putting together, there was some workshop-y time and somebody was kind of putting all the information together. And so when I received that, I'll share that out with you guys, but a couple of kind of the two most common threads that were coming up in these various group discussions. One was, great, so we're doing pretty good with affordable rentals, but what about affordable home ownership? So that was definitely something that came up quite a bit. And then also what can be done to improve the process of creating and building and getting through permitting and entitlements and blah, 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 any more efficiently to be able to create stuff. So I'll share that out with you guys as soon as I receive it. It sounded like they were saying like Friday this week or Monday next week.
One of the things, when I talk about affordable housing and just affordable home ownership. And one of the things like they talked about in the video is this idea of wealth generation and really building wealth. And it's not just, getting somebody into a unit. It's about building wealth, building opportunities, getting people, possibly, out of generational poverty, through housing. And that's why in this tour that we're looking at and the volunteer day, it's really looking at modular homes. I had a long discussion. We invited Molly to our board meeting, for my mobile home park. And we had a long conversation about, is manufactured housing the way to go, as far as, owning your home, or is it more of a modular? Because a modular goal, is that something that we need to be looking at more thoroughly? Well, you put together a really good proposal for exploring exploring mobile home park issues, like who owns it and is it chattel versus real estate, and so I think next month at this HAB meeting, we'll present your proposal that can get added to September or October. And then if Lauren, if you want to dig a little deeper into the concept of affordable home ownership, like I know I've been very interested in employer-based housing so that we can provide home ownership or at least allow some of our service providers to live
locally. And so if you have ideas about people that, that you'd like to be speakers or moderators or themes or topics, like I encourage you, and we're Jay
And
and
I
I,
just-
whoever are all helpful to.
And I just want to make sure that hasn't been a topic that has been discussed in recent history.
I think we've talked about like the missing middle, and we've talked about the potential for what might happen at the airport or at area plan and reserve and those kinds of things, but it hasn't really been like it hasn't been that specific topic.
Okay.
So I think it would be good.
It might also be a good idea to just, and I don't, this could even be like an annual thing. I know we've heard from them before. It's just like BHP, some people from BHP to come in, because it's such a large piece of what we discuss is BHP this, BHP that. So I don't think it hurts to hear from them on a semi-regular basis.
You can also attend their board meetings. I think they're open. Or look at their website, like,
I think that would play into pipeline as well.
I guess that would be my question. What do you want to hear? What do you want to hear specific numbers? Like this year we have this many new properties or this many new people housed, or like what do you?
Yeah, I think maybe better understanding, like, I think we all could benefit from a better understanding of how they operate. You know, we have this 15% affordable goal. Like, what does that actually mean? You know, like, break it down. What does affordable mean? You know, like, who qualifies for that? What are the metrics? What does their portfolio of residents look like? I just think we could benefit from learning about that, because when it comes to housing policy in Boulder, a lot of that is the development of affordable housing through BHP. So, you know, that's a big piece of the puzzle that we look at. I'm not saying it's something to do in the next few months, but it might be something we want to consider maybe later in the year or something like that.
I can also give you a tour of our dashboard that we have online. That basically has every single unit that's in our portfolio. Who it serves, what the income levels are, what type of unit it is, how many bedrooms.
that'd be good. Yeah.
Yep, I mean, I just think that's something we all could benefit from when we talk about housing in Boulder, is an understanding of what is this affordable housing, you know, that we throw that term around a lot. It can mean a lot of different things.
Jay, when you say our portfolio, is that Housing and Human Services? Is that BHP? Is BHP part of Housing and Human Services?
They're not, no, they're separate.
So it would just be the
But-
city and a city affordable program?
You know, when we say affordable housing, we're talking about deed restricted, permanently affordable housing. in
Right.
Boulder.
But that's in a city program, so it doesn't include.
And BHP has the vast majority of the rentals, but it's still only a percentage of the total portfolio. We have lots of other partners. We have Habitat, we have Thistle. We have private developers who build affordable housing. So. I can
What
share it
percent,
to you if you
are you
want.
able to say off the top of your head, what percent of the affordable housing is BHP, the deed restricted affordable housing units?
Let's pull up the dashboard.
If the answer is no, we don't have to get into that. And the meeting, whatever, keep it on track.
What's your guess?
My guess, it would be complete guess, 82%.
Yeah, I was between 80 and 90%.
Yeah.
What?
Of the rentals.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like BHP is a big piece of that puzzle, so.
All right, are there any other thoughts, suggestions?
Thought, and that is, I'm sorry, I haven't, my name is in the bottom list of upcoming possible things, and I have not forgotten about it, but I haven't given it attention, but I will give it attention. This idea of land value tax, I'm very interested in it. I want to go learn some more and then think carefully about how we might have a productive discussion about that here.
Well, I feel like you did a lot of heavy lifting already by organizing the renting bedrooms, like excess bedrooms, so I'm not rushing you to do
Okay.
that. I mean, I'd be delighted if you
Yeah.
wanted to.
I'd like, that's kind of like a goal for, by the end of the year, I'd like to kind of at least propose something that we might.
I have one thing that I wanted to raise. I think I've mentioned this before, but there's a new state law that says if someone has been renting a unit for more than a year, the landlord basically has to offer a lease renewal. And unless they have good cause not to. For example, the tenant's been repeatedly late on rent, or they're gutting the unit and rebuilding it, or a family member is gonna move in. But this is a big law. It says that they have to renew it, and they have to renew it on reasonable terms. That's state law. It does not define what reasonable is, but it contemplates if your landlord says, hey, I'm renewing your lease, but I'm doubling your rent. You have a good argument that's not reasonable, I don't have to pay. So there's this question of what is reasonable. And this speaks a lot to rent increases. If your landlord says 20%, is that a reasonable renewal? Probably not. And as a lawyer, I'm just like, no one has really decided how do we determine what's reasonable, but it's a big deal. And I've always thought that if the city could provide data or had some sort of methodology for collecting data from people who hold rental licenses as what is the average rent for a 1-bedroom unit in Boulder? How much has rent increased every year? If we had data, we could point to what's reasonable. If rent's stagnant in Boulder and we have good data from the city that says that, and a landlord's telling someone you've lived here for 5 years, now I'm gonna increase, I've been increasing your rent 3% every year. Now I'm gonna increase it 20% because of market conditions. And that doesn't pair up with the data. That gives the tenant good cause to say, this is not reasonable terms.
Is that the kind of data that the city collects? Like Terry Bruteg is a researcher who does a lot of analysis on multifamily industry in Metro Denver. I'm sure he does that, but I don't know how
Are we aware that that's an issue here? Like, is that something?
Well, the point is, like, I think the city has the ability to collect that data. When it does its rental licenses, can it ask how much do you charge for your unit?
Actually, I wonder
Or
if
is that
Sarah
confidential?
would collects that data.
Possibly.
From just a legal perspective, if the city has an established methodology, you can call someone from the city to testify. Like these poor tenants who are dealing with these issues, they don't have the ability to hire an expert witness from yada yada to testify about land values. And most of these issues never actually end up in court. It's the tenant and the landlord texting. And if the tenant can go on a website and say, hey, the city of Boulder says that rents increased 2% last year, and you're increasing my rent by 20%. I don't think that's reasonable. This is how most disputes in society are resolved. And they say, oh, I see that, I'll come down. But actually, I had a reason. I just think more transparency as to how much rent is going up can help people when they go to renew their lease.
So do you want to add that to our topics?
Yeah, I'd like to perhaps, yes, I'd like to add it. And maybe this is like a concrete policy proposal would be, can the city collect this information from people when they apply for their rental license? And can they, obviously they're not going to disclose, oh, this unit costs this much. But then can they aggregate the data every year and say, this is how much rent has increased based on our rental license applications to the city of Boulder? That seems to me like something the government could easily do and publicly report. And that would give tenants in this city good data to point to. If they're
Arguing against overregulation.
That's not.
Jay, what about?
But that's
what
not
about just
regulation.
AMI charts, like we know that.
Yeah.
Area median incomes increase.
But
X
that's
percent each
people's
year.
income, that's not rental rates. I think it would be an
That's
easy.
how HUD increases rental rates is just based on annual changes in the median
Income.
income.
Yeah, but I don't know, I just think.
One suggestion, so Brian Rosbert from Housing Colorado is going to be here next meeting to talk about last legislative session. You could ask him specifically about that.
It's just the same.
I can tell you, I'm familiar with what the law was, and the compromise was that the legislators didn't want to come up with a methodology. So they said, which is something politicians frequently do, we can't decide on what's reasonable, so let's just say what's reasonable and then have a judge decide when it gets into a courtroom. Well, how do judges decide things? Based on evidence. So lawyers need evidence to present to judges. What's reasonable is probably based market rates in the local market, but there's not really good market data on that sort of thing. You know, we can point to median income census.
I do think there's apartment data that you can find that will talk about annual increases community by community, and sometimes you have to pay for it. I don't know whether the city collects it, but like if you want to investigate market data, then I think we should bring it up, but I don't think we're gonna resolve anything in the next 5 minutes.
Well, no,
So
that's not what
we
I'm
can-
saying, but I'm saying
so-
an action item is this proposal,
Great.
can the city collect this? And is there someone in the licensing office that we can talk to and ask them, is that, you know, something that's possible? It's a policy idea.
I think we can decide whether that, like, right now, there's a whole list of different,
What's added to the list?
I just added it to the list. Right, anything else people want to talk about?
I think I have a question, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It just seems that I'll just throw it out there. For affordable housing, what are the income limits for affordable housing?
Which kind?
Like what incomes is affordable housing meant to serve?
It depends if it's ownership or
Ownership.
rental.
Ownership.
Ownership, in our program, we have homes up to 120% of area median income. Most of
Like-
them
You know what AMI is for one person in Boulder, a household of one?
just over, it's like 105,000.
Whereas like some of BHP's units target 30% AMI.
Those are rentals though.
Those are rentals.
Rentals are typically all 60% and below.
And do we know how many people in Boulder?
The dashboard will tell you exactly
Will you send us
Yes.
a simple link to the dashboard, Jen?
what incomes they earn, what units they're living in.
But the dashboard won't tell you the average rents over years in Boulder.
No, because we don't, it isn't a good source of data.
That's what I want to fix.
I think you should start a new business, Chip.
It's not a business. I feel like it's,
Well, it may not be data that the city collects, but like appraisals have data about average rental rates, and Carrie Brute gets hired to provide reports. So there are people who collect that data. It may just not be the city. So,
We've struggled with it mightily,
So it'll.
just because the methodology isn't consistent year to year. So you have different parties collecting it.
the idea is to give people of limited means access to this information. You know, knowledge is power. So, you know, someone whose landlord's jacking up the rent 20%, they can point and say, hey, that's not reasonable. The city of Boulder collects this information but I'll let it go.
or we can revisit it at a future meeting.
You said the dashboard will show the incomes of the people who are in those units?
Mhm.
But how would I find out, like, how many people in Boulder are in those income limits?
That live in affordable housing?
That qualify for affordable housing?
Can't tell you how many qualify, but I can tell you that 1 in 10 people in Boulder live in affordable housing.
But it'd be interesting to know, like, who actually, how many
And 10
people
and 10
in
people in
Boulder?
Boulder pay too much for housing.
How many people in Boulder, since the service industry is our largest industry, qualify for affordable housing, but cannot? It might help us better understand that 15%.
The tricky thing for Boulder is that students do not qualify for affordable housing in a large, but when the census collects data, they're not, I don't think they're distinguishing the students, you know, like when they collect race, ethnicity, all of that. I don't know if there's a good way to stipend that out. I'd assume most students, but for being a student, would qualify based on income, you know, because most students aren't making that much money.
So one thing you can look at is the Dr. God, the Denver Regional Council of Governments. They did a housing needs analysis by region of the entire Denver metropolitan area. And you can see what the needs are. So
Okay.
it's kind of a macro scale, but it's pretty significant. So the highest need are those lowest incomes, like you figured out. And it's basically 10,000 units.
There's also data on people who are rent burdened. They spend too much money on rent or mortgage compared to their income, and that's a pretty good indicator as well.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn? All in favor? All right, see you next month. Keep the ideas coming. We, Karen and I and Jay meet on a regular basis before our meetings. And, I know, and add items to the agenda, so, thank you. Time ending. People off, is that?
It's your
video.
anti-regulatory city.
Oh.
Yeah, regulatory.